right, good morning, everyone. We're going to call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, August 7th, 2025. It is 9:01 a.m. All council members are present, including the town manager, deputy town manager, town clerk, and town attorney. If you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just noticed that. That's great. I see that. That's great.
Just wants to be tall.
That's great. Well, hey, John.
Yes, I am.
All right, we have two items for discussion today. The first item is to discuss the fiscal year 2026 budget. Joe, you going to start us off, or or
No,
town manager?
we'll go right to Joe.
All right.
That'd be fine.
I see by the emails, Joe, you're up to your old ways at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Unfortunately, but, okay. We have the presentation, Josh. We can start with that. Good morning. I'm Joe Onzik, Finance Director. And I just would first of all like to thank Cassandra Penner for all of her work in assisting with putting the presentation together. So it's wonderful to have assistance like that. So I very much appreciate it. You can go to the next slide. Okay, so we're starting off by just kind of reviewing what was already presented. Just to give you an idea of lorem revenue increase of $670,000, and we do have non-ad valorem revenue increases of $617,000. But what that has ended up doing is simply reducing the amount of bridge loan or lost revenue that we actually have in comparison to FY22. And so we have a reduction in the bridge loan amount in comparison to what we were able to use last year by almost $1.5 million. Last year, we used $50,000 of our reserve that was carried forward from the previous year for vehicle purchase that we're not doing in FY26. So although the revenue is reduced, so did the expense reduce by that amount. And then the Estero landscape maintenance funding is just being carried forward from year over year. There's no change there. We are, let's see, expenses, so total general fund expenses, excluding the transfer to the emergency reserve, is an increase of $881,000, and we're increasing the transfer to the emergency reserve by $65,000. So we're bringing it from the $435,000 transfer that we had for this year up to an even $500,000 for next year. And that's what brings the deficit to almost $1.2 million. The personnel changes, this is probably a tedious analysis, but just so you can see where all the changes are taking place. If maybe, Josh, if you could just skip to the next slide just briefly to get to the bottom line. So really, if within the general fund itself, there's a net decrease of 1.25 full-time equivalent positions. And if you could go back to the previous slide, Josh. So, and those fine detailed changes are all represented on all these various line items. There's actually some headcount reductions, FTE reductions, like there's no systems administrator as an employee, no IT support as an employee. We moved the contracts manager position from the town clerk's office to the finance office. There was an addition, there's some changes between departments. Basically, that's what the rest of these items represent. We did move the community services director, about equivalent of half of his cost, into the stormwater fund, since so much of his time is actually supervising the stormwater improvements. So previously, the entire amount of his cost was being funded by the general fund. So that's part of that overall decrease, and why you're seeing these small decreases in the individual departments where he might be at. And if you could go to the next slide. let's see what I could point out. The neighborhood services rangers, I mean, it looks like we've added two, but in reality, we had two beach services two neighborhood services rangers that were previously funded by TDC that we did not receive that funding for this year. So now that funding is going back into the general fund. So that's part of that. What looks like there's an increase there, it's really not. It's just an increase in funding that we have to provide for that services. And I think within the finance department, I guess, if we go back that one more slide, again, the contracts, or we already spoke about the contracts manager. The contracts and procurement specialist, it's really mainly the procurement side of it. That's a brand new position that we added last year that we're carrying forward into the this next year. So I think that accounts for most of it, unless you have any questions about
So,
anything.
Real quick, Joe, so
Yeah,
this is the net 1.24
Yeah.
less technical employees than we had
Yes.
previous year.
yes.
And last year it was 16 and a half negative. So is it safe to say that it's almost 18 employees less over the last 2 years? To
Yes,
back up my claim
yes,
on Monday, saying that we're doing more with less.
yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, could you elaborate just a little bit more on that? So you're saying over the last 2 years, we've declined in terms of personnel by 18 people?
That's correct, because last
Yes.
year was 16.5 and now it's 1.24. So it's almost 18 people less over the last 2 years because of what Joe is saying, eliminating positions or moving people into different positions. So on Monday, I made the claim that we're doing more with less staff, and Joe just reiterated what I said is true.
Yes.
And that's 18 less people out of a total aggregate of how many people, Joe? Ballpark?
Oh my goodness.
I had that too. I knew you were going to
Yeah,
ask that.
It's not a lot.
No, I'm sorry.
It's in the 60s. I think the overall's low 60s, if memory serves me correct.
I'm sure we'll have that
'Cause
figure
we
in
were at
just a moment. But
77, so we've got to be right around 60.
yeah, I think
It's a pretty,
She's coming.
yeah, I was gonna say, somebody who could do
I'm
math
just
better than I.
Yeah, I'm just trying to base it off of last year's budget that I pulled up.
We have 69 FTEs in general fund.
So if we have 18 less than we did 2 years ago, what % decrease in personnel have we had in the last 2 years? Like, I don't have a calculator.
Percentage,
in
I
front
would
of
have to get my calculator out really fast, but
We can definitely figure that
I
out.
believe
It's pretty simple, yeah.
me. Yeah, I think that's, I just think that's an important number, yep.
I'm sorry, what was the?
I just bring that up because, we often hear, cut staff or cut wages or cut the.
Previous town manager and staff did an excellent job at that. We continue to look at ways to economize, but we're operating very efficiently at
Yeah.
the moment.
And Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
for everyone out there watching this on YouTube or from whatever streaming service they watch it from, we did load this presentation into the item this morning, so they're not seeing it currently
So
on
can you
screen.
clarify that, Madam Clerk? So when you say,
That item, to the
'Cause-
budget discussion
a
item.
lot of times when you click on that, it says agenda and then it says agenda packet. But if they
Correct.
click on the agenda packet, this will show up.
Correct.
It's 20.6%.
You already got it, okay.
sorry.
So, or is that a significant difference?
No, because it's all different levels.
Well, right, I
It's
mean,
all different levels.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily equate it to
Right.
that, but, I mean, it should be roughly in the ballpark. I can get that calculation, but,
I just wanted to make sure that it makes sense to translate that 20% reduction in personnel to a roughly 20% reduction in payroll costs. Is that fair?
I
Roughly.
think so. I mean, I
don't
think
want to
so.
put words in your mouth.
Right, it's just that, right, like,
I know there's a lot of variables.
There
but
are.
people are just asking in general,
okay.
is it roughly equate?
Yeah, you could say that, but it's not exactly it, but you could say that.
But it's not a demonstrable difference.
Probably not.
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations. If someone's doing the job of 2 people, obviously they're probably going to make a little bit more, but it would be less than what 2 positions would be. Then you add in insurance costs and all the other things that go with it. So I don't think it's an exact percentage to percentage,
No.
but it's probably fairly close. So it's safe to say that one person doing
Yes, I mean, those are all possibilities that could change it, one way or another, so yes. Okay, so are there any other questions on personnel?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that, since you're just new back, that you'd be able to answer this, but this is along personnel. Checking the town's app, there are 14 job openings. I assume that's correct. 10 full-time and 4 part-time. Are those already budgeted, do we know, or in this budget?
Yes, they are.
They should
Okay.
be, because we wouldn't have approved them to be advertised.
To answer Dan's question, you are accurate. Over the last 2.5 years that I've been here, we have looked at multiple positions and we tried to downsize. But a lot of times that meant we took one or other responsibilities to, capitalize on employee strengths, and then we would go out into the job market to try to find top talent. Obviously, you know that the job market in 2025 is very competitive, and so we've had to maintain competitive salary and insurance to bring people out to the island, which has also been a challenge, especially with traffic and off-season. So to answer your question, yes, you're right on.
Well, I think it's important to add a little bit of history, a context to this history. Before the storm, there was really no pay structure set up.
Right.
It was whatever the town manager felt was appropriate to whoever he felt it was appropriate to give a raise to. So after the storm, when management changed, what those raises potentially could be versus no one knew what it was before. So at the beginning, it did increase a little bit simply based on the, I think it was Evergreen study, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
that was done right after the storm. I think Keith asked to have that done so that we could align with other municipalities just to make your point.
Absolutely. So when I first got here, that study had just been completed, and the pay ranges were all over the place. It was just dependent on whatever director or the town manager was hiring at that time, and they would, I don't know, it was up to their discretion to create the pay range. So updated pay plan where every year, regardless of your position, you would get a dollar year after year, which doesn't really tie performance to pay, and it's just an arbitrary number. And what happened is a lot of people are paid way out of their pay grade, and so with the pay grade and the pay, that was more money just to get people where they needed to be. But over time, with the dollar over dollar, year over year, it's actually saved us money, and it has people in those associated pay grades.
Lisa, I know this is premature, but maybe you could say you're working on it, but it sounds like you're pretty close. You're gonna shift the paradigm even more with a performance-based management system. Is that fair? Can you elaborate it?
Absolutely.
As much as I know you've not announced it yet, but can
Yes.
you let folks know what you're doing? Because I think that's a paradigm shift.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, and I'm sorry, I did not state, I worked very closely with the town manager this year, and we are establishing, and if any of the employees are listening, they don't know yet, so I'm sure they'll be excited. So we are establishing a performance for pay program. So you will see an increase that Joe is going to present, but that is so that we can encompass the total dollar amount to be able to support the performance-based pay plan. And it's another way we can incentivize employees to tie our performance to the town's mission, objectives, and goals to support the residents. So we are trying to lead more of a culture of accountability and get employees buy-in. And this is a way that we can incentivize them monetarily, which is also very important. So we're really excited that we're actually right now in performance review mode. We'll be having those reviews with the employees in a September for an October 1, but we had enough money left over in the budget for the current year. But next year we're gonna implement even more. So it'll be based off of a score. So it's a 10-question performance review, and it also has goals tied to it. And then they'll get a percentage of their total salary once a year at the start of the fiscal year, depending on their overall score. So we're really excited to be able to implement that, and again, tie what we're doing every day out in the field, in the office, to our mission, which is serving the residents.
I would just say by just experience, I worked for Governor Mitch Daniels, who was the former OMB director at one point under President Bush, and then he came back and was our governor. He implemented this for the state of Indiana and for state government, and it literally revolutionized state government in a very positive way. And those folks who were working hard and were succeeding at their positions were rewarded, and those folks who were not, they either had a work improvement plan or they were let go. And so it really creates an accountability issue, but it also rewards those folks who are performing. So I commend you for doing that. It literally revolutionized state government in Indiana, so I think it'll have a positive impact on Fort Myers Beach.
Thank you. And I also want to say we do realize how important it is that the people who are performing the performance reviews are trained and understand that it needs to be objective. It needs to align with our mission. So we have had leadership trainings this past week on that. So our leadership staff are equipped to implement those in an effective way, and HR will be overseeing all of that.
Thanks. Lisa.
Yes, you're welcome.
I'm not sure that your question was answered, John, as far as a hiring freeze.
It's not necessarily a question as much as I'd hope that's something we'd look at before we look at increasing the millage rate. Is it possible, in my mind, that's what we do in the private sector, freeze those positions when revenues are not where they should be? That savings could then maybe drop down. That's what I would like us to take a look at.
I think it would be, not to interrupt, Joe, but I think it would be important to know what those positions are. Are they coming out of the community development fund? Are they coming out of the water fund? Are they coming out of the general fund? It would be nice to know what positions are coming from where.
Sure.
To make your point, I think, Counselor King.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure that could all be reassessed, especially what might come out of this meeting and direction from this meeting.
I think we have to be careful, though, with a hiring freeze,
Mhm.
because we're already down 18 positions year over year total. And it's different having a hiring freeze versus a replacement position. So if someone leaves, do we replace that position, or how do we replace that position when we're already 18 people down? So hiring freeze can get a little,
Well, I think
just be
that,
cautious.
I think that's why I tried to make the point of it's important to know what positions, like say for instance, community development, if that's being funded by permit fees and things that do not
Right.
come out of the general fund,
Exactly.
or.
Then it's a wash.
Then, obviously, I don't know that necessarily would have to fall into the category of a hiring freeze, so to speak, but it would be interesting to know what would be funded by the general fund when it comes to these positions.
Absolutely, and I can do an assessment of that and provide that to you, but I will say, prior to budget, we sat with each department director, and I looked at the vacancy times of positions, and there were positions cut that we thought were not necessary. We just did that recently. But, it's really important to think about the impact of the town's operations pre-Ian versus post-Ian. Before, we had a very small finance department because we didn't have these large sums of money coming in, right? Grants and grant funding. And so we do have a grants coordinator position out because we have identified that we need help internally with managing these grants effectively. And so I just hope that we keep that into consideration. But I can absolutely do an assessment of all of and the other thing, that's a really good point that you made, John. A lot of the times, if you look at our careers page, we have a lot of vacancies. So we are operating at a lower rate. So while our budget numbers might be higher, our actual operating cost and operating numbers are generally lower than what you see in the budget because of the vacancies that we hold. It's like, again, it's been difficult and a challenge to find people to come out to the island at times and to stay. I mean, we've even had some turnover because of that, where they initially, they think that it would be manageable, but then they determine that it isn't. So a lot of the times we really are running bare bones, and there are many more vacancies than you're seeing on the budget. But I will absolutely look at all of the vacancies again. I can provide a breakdown of what is covered in the general fund versus the water fund and the building fund and TDC, and then I can make a recommendation if there are any long vacancy times or anything that we can do internally to kind of downgrade and continue to minimize.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just add, if I can,
Mhm.
Mr. Mayor and Councilor King, I agree 100% with everything Talisa said, and she's managed this very effectively and efficiently in my mind. And many of these positions are essential positions. We talk about all of them on a regular basis. In addition to the senior accountant or say grants coordinator, we've also got a senior accountant position which is still vacant, and assistant finance director, code managers, and junior planners. And as I look at all those positions, each one of those is essential for efficiency, us having an efficient government and being, and they answer the need for us in a code compliance perspective to more effectively manage the town and help our residents, but also there is revenue associated with some of those positions as well. And our junior planner position, you know, everybody, you know, I hear the complaints from the community, comments from the community, I should say, about, you know, permitting process and why does it take so long to get responses? And how does the, you know, the planning and development process, why does it take so long? So we're trying to answer those things very, very, you know, economically though, I must say. And I approve every hire finally, you know, there's nothing approved at a lower level. We're managing things, you know, at the highest level that we can right now. So we will definitely look at it, Councilor King,
And
as
that's
a potential option, but I just ask that you can take those things into consideration.
Thank you.
Okay. You can go to the next slide, Josh. Okay, so I hopefully you can see this. So these are just to highlight some of the major expense changes in the budget. So as Talisa highlighted, there is a performance-based bonus pay plan that's going to be rolled out, and that's going to increase the total expenditures by about $70,000. Life and health insurance, this was the budgeted increase based at 9.8%. That's going up by about $337,000, but that has not been finalized yet. It may be a lot more, it may be less. So, but that is what it was budgeted at this point. And I think it'll be soon, rather soon, that we'll have, you know, what the options available to choose from, but we don't have that at this point. The wages, because of the slight reduction in headcount, moving some expense into the special revenue funds, the overall increase, which includes the 2.6 COLA increase, which is the May over May measurement, which the town has been using the last couple of years, because the Evergreen study was implemented based on the May survey. So then the following year we did a May over May increase, a COLA increase of 1.8%. So now again this year the May over May increase, consumer price index wise, is 2.6%. So that's included in that $95,000 figure. Workers' compensation actually is, for whatever reasons, is going down by $32,000. On the capital side, we budgeted $62,000 worth of capital purchases within the general fund that are not there this year. On the additional operating, like services type expenditures, so we have liability insurance going up $105,000. Just overall contracted labor increase in all the departments within the general fund. If you add it all together, there's some decreases, some increases. The net change in total is almost $89,000. Legal services, that's a combination of a few different line items. Some have gone down, some have gone up, but the overall net change in all of our legal service line items is a $100,000 increase. Fireworks, that's really a reflection of the special events line item that is increased by $155,000 to accommodate fireworks, the expensive fireworks for both 4th of July and New Year's. And then there's an increase of law enforcement expenses, overall law enforcement expenses of $135,000. And then transfers, we're transferring an additional $65,000 to the emergency fund.
That should be 435, not 465, correct?
I'm sorry, which figure?
Transfer to emergency funds was actually 435, not 465. That's where you get 65,000.
Oh, yes, you're correct. It must be a typo then, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Okay, any questions at this point?
Not necessarily a question, but maybe Talisa can address this, because I know you had done a good job in the past of shopping the insurance, the life and the health, and I'm assuming that you're continuing to do that as well. And just explain maybe.
Sure. So Talisa Oliveira, Human Resources Director, for the record. Okay, so currently we are out to market. We are trying to get bids from a few different carriers. We have been very lucky to have the rich plan that we have at the rate that we have. So, you know, we have had some large claims in the last in the last year, the current fiscal year. And so, yeah, we're not sure where we're at. That was the 9.8% that you see budgeted. I am expecting that it will come in higher. But we are out to market, and I should have some options for you September 11th. Okay?
Thank you, appreciate it.
Joe, without getting into the weeds, the
Yeah.
fireworks and law enforcement,
Mhm.
is that an addition? Is that what you're budgeting this year above what was last year?
Yes, and in anticipation of that, I did look this up, so, and maybe Jeff might be
Yeah,
able to.
Jeff can talk about the fireworks.
Yeah.
Hi, Jeff Hauge, Community Services Director. Yeah, so with everything kind of, I pulled the numbers a little bit on just all of our special events that we have. Fireworks obviously is the biggest expense that we have, and actually it's right around the fireworks, that's just the fireworks and barge alone. When we do it, that's not including like staff overtime, it's a higher number than that. It's almost like 270,000 to do the fireworks and the parades and all those things with staff overtime. That's also including law enforcement, so those numbers are kind of combined. Law enforcement costs have just gone up with what Lee County charges us to close the bridge, to close off streets, those kind of things. So that was just one of the line items that was one of our biggest special events lines.
So these two items, I know we're going to talk about it in September, but these two line items for me give me great pause. You know, in the past, obviously this wasn't shouldered by the town of Fort Myers Beach. We know that they bring money into the community, obviously, but I'm having a hard time telling residents that, you know, we're increasing your millage rate because of fireworks that everybody gets to enjoy, but it's being shouldered on the backs of the residents. So I would really like you to take a look at this and figure out a way, which I'm sure we're going to talk about, which was brought up, I think, on Monday by both Councilor King and Councilor Woodson, about, you know, how do we put some of this burden on those that enjoy it, that come in temporarily, whether it's overnight. Visitors, I think, should have to bear a lot of this cost, in my opinion. That's a huge amount of money to put into a budget, which could substantially draw down on that 1.255 potential number.
Yeah, and I mean, granted, we still will have some of the law enforcement with bigger crowds.
Sure.
We will have a little bit of overtime with staff, with just the amount of trash and everything that comes. But yeah, that's one thing that we've been talking about. That's why we're bringing it up now. Is that's a big expense, and we realized that. We tried to go to TDC because we thought it's a visitor service for sure, but their lawyers had kind of shot that one down. I know Sanibel and Town of Fort Myers Beach asked for it, and both of them got denied. So I agree. It's just something to talk about. It is a pretty good chunk of change. I'm not saying it's not. And we have to figure out a way to, for one, if we want to do them, and then two, how we're going to foot the bill.
Okay, I mean, and I'm in favor of both, obviously. I fully support law enforcement and the fireworks, but at the expense of the residents, we need to find a better way, I think.
Yeah, we've had preliminary discussions already. I know we have kind of talked to the chamber a little bit, and it's just the way costs are going up. We used to only pay like $30,000 for fireworks. You know, cost for everything just has gone up. They want more law enforcement here because of public safety, so we get a kind of a large
barge, all that adds
Yep,
cost.
absolutely. So we're talking about it. Obviously, you know, some guidance on your end too would be nice, but we've been talking about the options of.
Well, we've been fortunate to have some large donors over the past couple of years, you know, kick in on that, and maybe that happens going forward, but you can't budget on that, right?
Yeah, and really our what was it, 42,000 this year? I mean, it's a good chunk. Don't get me wrong, and we were very happy to get it, but we still put a lot more into it than that.
All right, thank you.
Any questions?
I guess maybe, since Fort Myers is also discussing this, I don't know if it's any cheaper, and someone like Sam Lurie has brought it up before, a drone show. I don't know if that's any cheaper or not.
We did price out the drone show, just very preliminary last year. It was around 75 per show to do a show like that. And I know I did see the Fort Myers ones. This is going to be their last fireworks. Oh, and they actually, the mayor actually said that I don't know if they would even do them this year, but it's their 250th anniversary, so they're going to do them. So there are a lot of communities around that stopped doing them, honestly. So I'm not saying that's the direction we're going, but it's just the options that we have.
Sure. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, thanks. That's good.
And if you can hear that noise in the background, they are drilling into the concrete right above our heads, so we'll do what we can. Everybody will speak a lot louder. Hopefully it's not coming through too bad.
Okay.
Thank goodness.
It's literally right over our head.
Okay, you can go to the next slide.
Pretty soon they'll be dropping.
Thank you.
Bite your tongue.
This was prepared department by department so that you can kind of see, I think you were talking about silos, like where revenues are coming in versus expenditures. So obviously most of the administrative type departments like town council, town manager, town clerk, human resources, I mean, they're not revenue generating, but they're an essential function, obviously. So all you see are expenses there. Finance, I mean, it's not exactly that we're generating the revenue, but that's where all of the revenues are coming in terms of ad valorem, and any of the tax revenues are coming in. So that's as a result of that. So we are ahead there, but that's not because we're generating it. Short-term rentals, that obviously is a very important source of revenue versus their expenses. So I'm a little bit concerned about the short-term rental expense. I don't think, I mean, it is on this slide, but I think it's not 100% accurate. I think we need to do some fine-tuning as far as allocating the actual expenses that need to be allocated there. That's not been done yet. So I think the expenses will actually go up once we allocate the appropriate amount of expenses, like from legal services and then the employees who are actually involved there. So that's not representative of that. I think that's just the software at this point. Legal services, that's just the total cost in general. General government, you know, obviously there's not revenue coming in there. Community development, there is some revenue. But the expense far outpace the revenues because of the types of services they're providing that aren't necessarily something that is charged for. Code enforcement, they have brought in revenue, but it's quite an operation to fund, so that, you know, net wise it's still contributing a negative amount. Town hall maintenance is simply that. It's just the cost of maintaining town hall. You can go to the next slide.
Before you move on,
sure.
I guess when I was speaking about silos,
Yeah.
I appreciate this, but
Yeah.
I was thinking more granular. And we are
Okay.
proposing a 26%
Yeah.
increase to the 6.2% tax that you pay. But I was trying to get more granular. I was looking for more things, and I'll just use the example of community policing. It's something that we fought very hard for. We did get it put on there, but currently we're not using it. Is that a revenue source that we could eliminate, or not a revenue source, but is that a line item that we could eliminate to help offset that and revisit it in the future? So that's the type of granular thing that I'm looking for, to see if there's breakdowns in the budget somewhere, whether there's something at Bay Oaks. I know that's not gonna go over well, but, you know, we know year after year, that's a very large line item to us, the Mound House, things like that. When I say silos, I'm thinking more granular. What is budgeted but we're not using? Does that make sense? Or what's not being utilized enough to warrant, at this time, having it as a service?
Okay.
And again, as much as it pains me, because we did fight very hard to get community policing on there, but if we're talking about a significant potential increase in the millage rate, I think we need to look at all of those sources.
There might be more of those on the next slide that might fit
Yeah, I didn't
more
s-
what
yeah,
you're
I didn't see
expecting.
it, but I thought I'd bring it up.
But I understand what you're asking for. So if you do go to the next slide, Josh. Okay, so I think here you'll see some of those like departments, like the Bay Oaks pool. Obviously that's not even open yet, but we do have liability insurance expense related to that. Bay Oaks Recreation Center, there's not a lot of revenue generated yet, and there's a large expense associated with operating it. But Bayside Park is, as far as budget, it's relatively paying for itself. Mowing field operations, there's a place where revenues are not sufficient to cover the expenses. Neighborhood services
Joe, could I
yes.
just stop you on the mooring field piece? Because I think there's a little bit of confusion about mooring field numbers here, because
Okay.
people look at this and they assume that we're not charging enough to cover the costs of servicing the mooring field. And Frankie was gonna appear at Anchorage Advisory Committee yesterday to discuss this in more detail. I think he got called away to a meeting. Could we just let Frankie come up and just talk just briefly about the mooring field? Because I think there were some one-time expenditures that created a little bit of a distortion in this number that are no longer a challenge for us going forward.
Okay.
Frankie, did you want to touch on that?
Well, plus you're also looking at increasing fees anyway, aren't you?
They were just recently increased, and I think they're at market rate now. So that it's always an option, though. If we need to, we gotta certainly cover our costs. The mooring field, just for people who are listening, needs to be revenue neutral. It's not a profit center for the town, but we also should not be operating it at a loss. And so but oftentimes we have, particularly as it related to Hurricane Ian, we have one-time expenditures that have, sometimes they're funded, sometimes they're not, sometimes, Frankie, take it away. You were getting ready to opine yesterday.
Yes, good morning. My name is Frankie Kropacek, Community and Planning Director for the town of Fort Myers Beach. The mooring field is kind of a unique animal. After Hurricane Ian, putting the pieces back together, we were operating at a fraction of what the full field could provide. And if you go back historically, you'll see that incrementally we had just so many mooring balls available right after the storm for immediate use compared to where we're at now, almost at full operation. Through that time, we've also had a lot of maintenance into that field. So they had to bring in engineers to make sure that some of those mooring balls did not translocate with wave action and storm action. We've been running into putting our markers back, having a lot of, I should say, not heavy-handed consulting, but groups that we don't have the expertise to bring. So we use coastal engineering, people like that, to come in and look at the mooring field and how we can either expand or put it back better than it was. We're still in the process of doing that. In fact, we're kind of really at the tail end of that. The projection going forward is very good. We've got a top grade operation. We asked Curtis last year when we were going through this exercise to kind of look at revenues around.
Curtis being our harbor master.
Our harbor master, yes, correct, I'm sorry. So we asked Curtis Ludwig to take a look at operations around here, other municipalities that operate mooring fields. And we're right in that sweet spot. So when you talk about encouraging and upping that fee, yes, you can tweak it. We know that cost of living, everything goes up. So we can take that up a few, but you want to be in that area that provides what we need to provide. We're still without a permanent structure for the mooring field. They used to be in the hotel there, and after Ian, that kind of got taken away. Currently, they're kind of like, I always joke, they're like trolls under the bridge. They're in our community hazard trailer, basically doing operations. The dinghy dock is almost ready to be put back in. It's under a final part of manufacturing. We had a boat loss to the town, which we're replacing and combining two services, both code compliance with the maintenance staff. So that vessel will be shared to do both of those items. We did a huge cleanup operation, not only through the mooring field itself, but also through the canals. Not that reflected onto the mooring field, but with staff, time, all those things taken into consideration. The numbers are what the numbers are for right now. You can't hide behind that. But knowing what we've done now to set the stage for what we're going into next year, I think we're going to be in a heck of a lot better spot for that.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
And since we're on this page, I really want to challenge staff. When you look at that, the most glaring number obviously is Bay Oaks. That is almost the entire amount of the deficit that we have. Or what's the word?
It's a structural deficit.
There you go, thanks. There's got to be something in there that we can help offset that. We all know that when the pool is up and running, that that offsets a lot of that cost. There's a huge amount of the revenue that comes in from the pool. We can always revisit that later, but I'd really like to dive into the nuts and bolts of that 1.1 million deficit at Bay Oaks.
I think we definitely will, Mr. Mayor, and Jeff can come up and talk a little bit about this. We're reviewing fees across the whole town, you know, and everything, and fees are only a part of it. I know Jeff can speak to, but, you know, as he's educated me over the last 90 days, definitely, you know, they've been holding fees steady since Ian, not increasing fees for obvious reasons and the right reasons. But it is time to start looking at that. Fees are only make a small dent in that, but I'd like Jeff to talk in detail a little bit more now, but we'll have more ready in the coming weeks.
Yeah, Jeff Hauge, Community Services Director. Just speaking about the Bay Oaks budget. I was just looking at it right now again, and you know, we do have I think this year was about 1.1 million just for overall costs, and we're barely hitting 500,000, which is still a lot. Don't get me wrong. We're trying to be as lean as we can. With all the hurricanes and storms coming through, we've been a little lenient with residents. I shouldn't say lenient. We've given them the opportunity to come back and at least try our facilities. So we kind of held off on some of the fees, but we are going to be starting them August 15th. So to have memberships back and charging for the services.
Well,
right.
part of the problem too is you can't charge fees if it's not open.
Oh, that 100%, yeah. But
So-
even, yeah, and
and it
especially.
hasn't been open.
It hasn't been.
And now we are, I mean, the facility is fully ready. You know, the weight room just got in this week, which is great. We're still gonna give the residents till the 15th to come try it out and see our new equipment and our new gym. Pickleball for the residents has been free. We've been charging just a nominal fee of $5 for non-residents right now, just so they can come in and use a facility too. But all those will increase to our fee schedule, which I think I talked to Nicole. We'll post all that here soon, but it's a different topic. But we are trying to be as lean as possible. You know, it is a huge deficit for sure. I understand that, and you know, I'm willing to look at it, you know, line by line and see what we can do to make some cuts. And
Well, Jeff, and I think it's, you know, we all understand this is some temporary things, right, that we're going through. And I know once that facility's done, all the grading is done and the field is done, there's gonna be opportunities to create events there that can bring money in to help offset these costs. I fully understand that, but I think, you know, we can revisit that next year, right? When everything's done and back up but I really would challenge you to find individual items, because if we talk about some of these other things that have been discussed already with, you know, fireworks and law enforcement and community policing and things like that, now that number gets much less, right? That and I'm not suggesting that we completely get rid of Bay Oaks and get rid of that 1.1 million, but I think a combination of all these can help us get that number down to where it's a manageable number at least.
yeah, and I know it's always kind of the adage that the rec centers don't necessarily make money at all. They're a community service to the but we want to get at least closer to that number, and I totally agree with that. You know, like I think it was right before Ian, we tried to do a decent sized fee increase, and you know, that we went over months of that with BORCAB. I don't care if you remember that, or Dan, I think you were on there too. But I think it's, you know, it's time, and I know our main goal is to have the services definitely for the residents at a lower cost, and try to, you know, charge a little bit more for the non-residents that come and do it. So we'll probably be doing some fee tweaking. We want to get the programs back too. You're right, to Councilor Woodson's point. We haven't had anything going on there. I understand that. I really do. We want to get senior programs back and get people in there and gain some revenue too, and have more sports leagues. We had such a good momentum going before Helene with some leagues and stuff gaining revenue. So we just got to get that back. And I definitely, though, Mr. Mayor, will look at the budget.
This is where it might be a little off topic, so I could have just a little leniency. But the pool, I know we sent it out for bid once, and it came back because we didn't have enough people bid on it. Have we cleared that hurdle now that the RFP or the request is over? Now we can move forward even if there is not three?
Yes, we have.
That's correct.
Go ahead,
So,
Yes, on the 15th, I'm sorry to interrupt, on the 15th, we'll be awarding the bid. We only had one come in, which this round, the first round, we needed 3 qualified bids to come in, or we had to go rebid, and we only had 1 or 2 for the pool. So we did get the okay now that we went through the second. We got 1 bid, so they're the design. So We're gonna get the design contract ready to go, and then after that will be the construction. So it is moving, it's just, we've had kind of hurdles with the process.
And I think it's important to note that the rebuild of this pool will be funded through CDBGR funding, which we've already been approved for. It will not come out of the general fund. It's not part of what we're discussing here, but it will be significant in being able to help offset some of these costs that we have a deficit for right now.
Absolutely, it's gonna be a much nicer, the other pool was nice, but this is gonna be much nicer, and I think we usually get a lot of, like summers, for example, we get a lot of busloads of kids coming in from summer camps. We haven't had that. So I think just with having a new pool and some great marketing by our team, I think we're gonna get a good response to our pool, for sure. But yes, it will not come out of the general fund at all. It's getting paid for through the GDR project through HUD and the county.
Don't we have FEMA in there too, or not? Or is it just CDBG?
Yeah, we'll have to pay it. FEMA will be first. I think we got close to 180,000 for the pool from FEMA, I think,
That's
coming.
it? Okay.
And the pool alone was, when we costed it out, was a little more than, the slide alone was more than that, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we know how that process goes.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff, as you get ready to initiate membership fees again, I remember, and it's been a while, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you guys, to your credit, got the Bay Oaks facility accredited with the Silver Sneakers program designation. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did. Neil Mathis, who's our manager down there, he's been looking into it again. I mean, we still have it. We just got to get the paperwork in line with the insurances. But yeah, we were approved by Silver Sneakers, so that's going to help.
And that's really big, because a lot of folks, if we're accredited through Silver Sneakers, the membership to Bay Oaks could be covered by their health insurance program.
Or a good majority of it, yeah.
Or a good majority of it. So that could really be, particularly if we advertise that well, that could be really helpful to a lot of folks.
And Councilor Adderholt, we really fought for that one because they said we were too close to another Silver Sneakers, but none on the island. So I'm like, you could go an hour and a half to get to one, but we did get that approved finally.
That was a big deal. Yeah, let's really push that.
But I agree. We need to look at this budget and go line by line. And Mr. Mayor, I'm kind of in the same way. We need to get in the weeds a little bit, line by line, and see what we can do. And just to be clear, the fireworks budget is in the Bay Oaks budget.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, it's under our special events, so that is a portion of it. I know 1.1 million's a lot, and 100 or 200,000 is just a drop in the bucket, but I think it would help.
Appreciate it, thank you.
And this might be a good time just to remind everyone that even if we do increase fees as part of the budget, it's not going to change the deficit. Mm-hmm. It just reduces the amount of lost revenue that we have, which reduces the amount of the bridge loan.
Right.
So it's good because it'll reduce the amount of the bridge loan, but it won't solve the deficit problem for this year. The other thing, the questions that came up regarding the mooring field, that did cause me to wonder and look, because I wasn't a part of the process of putting it together. I would like to look at the line items to see, there's a possibility that maybe there's something in there added to the general fund budget that might be more appropriate in the capital fund budget. So I want to just take a look at that. So that's a possibility that may be causing this to appear more than it should be. Any other questions on this topic? On this slide, yeah. Oh, okay. We can
And just, again, it's not gonna be widely popular, but looking at the you know, a lot of the top line items on their Mound House as well, that's something I would really encourage us to look line by line item to see if there's any possible way to, every little bit helps at this case to eliminate that the deficit spending. So any of those big ones, if you could really dive into.
go to the next slide, Josh. Okay, and then this is just to kind of reiterate what we already presented regarding the bridge loan. It's calculated based on 2022 revenues, which are the pre-Ian revenues, except for ad valorem. And the reason for ad valorem being an exception is that the effect of on property tax values isn't felt until the next year. And so then at that for that reason, we're comparing the ad valorem revenue line item to the actual revenues collected in 2023. And then this is just to remind everyone, until we are no longer using the bridge loan, according to the terms of the agreement, we may not use any non-ad valorem revenue for capital projects, because they're expecting us to use any non-ad valorem revenue to go towards repayment of the bridge loan.
Joe, maybe this is a good time to reiterate what you said on Monday. These roughly $7.5 million that we received in state appropriations for
Yes.
revenue replacement has been put aside for replacement of the bridge loan. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely. So that'll cover that much of the bridge loan, but that doesn't cover the whole thing. And
Sure,
that's
but
what-
there is obviously interest associated with the bridge
Yes,
loan, and the
yes.
repayment got moved out to 2033, but staff has taken proactive stance on making sure that money is there to repay this loan.
well,
Should it not be forgiven down the road sometime?
that's true. I mean, well,
Well, what I want to say is there's no zero balance to start paying it back.
I'm sorry, no, that comment I'm not quite sure I understand. When you say no zero balance,
Well,
what-
the $7.5 million
Yes.
in appropriations has
Yes.
been set aside
Yes.
specifically for repayment of this
yes,
bridge loan. It's
Yes.
not zero. There's some misconception out there that we're not planning for repayment of this loan, and all of a sudden we're gonna be hit with it later, should it not be forgiven, is what I'm trying to get at.
oh, no, that's very true. And what also, there's been, the interest on the bridge loan dollars has been accumulating, so that is also going towards repayment of it, so it's all within that fund. And, you know, up until we now are needing to use another $1.4 million of it, before that point, we should have had just enough to repay the bridge loan. So basically, this, having to use the 1.4 million this coming year is now the amount that we need to
That
figure
makes
out how
sense.
to repay. So,
You just piqued my interest in something, Mr. Mayor. So are you saying that we got a $7 million appropriation to pay back the bridge loan?
well, it was for revenue replacement, and so that was the purpose of it. So, I mean, in my,
Is that sitting there in a pot somewhere?
it is.
It is?
And it's
Accruing interest?
Well, I think, I mean, I haven't looked. I mean, it's either in its own fund. It was placed in its own fund when we first got it, but the plan was to use it to repay the bridge loan. So honestly, I don't know if it got moved into the bridge loan fund or if it's still sitting in its own fund. But either way, it's there, and it's accruing.
But didn't the
revenue.
contracts in those say that any interest accrued would go back to the state since it was an appropriation, or was that just the bridge loan part of it?
No, there's nothing in the bridge loan.
Okay.
The revenue replacement has nothing like that because that is simply a grant. There is no
Okay.
strings tied to that.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'm just curious, the thinking of the legislature. So we got a $7 million appropriation to help pay back the bridge loan. Why did they do that versus forgive the bridge loan? What was their thinking?
Well, I can't speak for the legislature, but I can tell you, if you remember the first year, there was a significant amount of money that was appropriated for revenue replacement to the fire district. And I can't speak for the legislature, but I think there was a little misunderstanding that the fire district doesn't fall under the jurisdiction of the town of Fort Myers Beach when it comes to budgeting. So I don't want to say it was a mistake, but I think that I think the intent was to try to help out overall. So I think to your, we needed the bridge loan right away to be able to operate and keep the lights on. So that was something that we were able to get right away. And then obviously next year, when we brought it to their attention, that 14 or 14.5 million was great, but the town of Fort Myers Beach doesn't actually see any of that revenue. And I think that's when they went back and tried to help us get some revenue replacement. So I think it was some crossing lines there a little bit, if you will, much like everybody does. A lot of people don't understand that the fire district does not fall under the jurisdiction of the town of Fort Myers Beach when it comes to budgeting. So I think it might have been a simple mistake, and again, I don't want to speak for them, but that's my interpretation of what I think I
Yeah,
saw.
no, that's helpful. Thank you. I didn't know that background, yeah.
Okay, you can go
I
to.
want to say very thankful for it and just trying to
Oh,
understand it.
absolutely,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
Just trying to understand it, yeah.
Thank you, Josh. So I know this is probably too small, but I tried to put it on 2 slides. So this was just to show in presentation format how the lost revenue was calculated. And so we have in that first column of numbers, it's the FY22 actual revenues. And then the second column of numbers is the FY23 actual revenues. So we're graying out that very first line for ad valorem in the FY2 because that's not relevant to the comparison. Because what this is leading to is we want to compare one of those two columns to the proposed budget. And so we're graying out the FY22 figure for ad valorem because we're only going to be using the FY23 figure for ad valorem. All of the rest of the revenue line items, we are comparing to the FY22 pre-even levels. We're graying out FY23 because that's not relevant. But I wanted to present both, maybe it was overkill, but just so maybe visually you could understand and see, you know, which figures we're using to compare our FY26 budget to. And then the far right-hand column is the difference between the column that we're comparing to, whether it's 22 or 23, and the proposed budget. The reason why the difference is 0 for ad valorem is that this is the point at which we crossed, for ad valorem is now about $69,000 more than it was in FY23. So that's no longer factored in to the lost revenue calculation.
So Joe, to try to simplify what
Yeah.
I think I just heard you say, and for
Yes.
people out there, is although it may appear that the ad valorem has come back to where it was pre-storm, this is just a demonstration of how everything else that goes into that besides the ad valorem has not caught up to the ad valorem numbers yet.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are a few scattered here or there. You'll see some positive figures, so they help reduce the amount of revenue, lost revenue, but most everything, the majority of them are still below hurricane pre-Ian levels. You can go to the next slide, I think, Josh.
Whoa.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So are we gonna go through some of these items and try to understand better why we're in a deficit situation? In other words, I see a pretty significant number for state communication services. Could we flesh that out a little bit
Okay, I don't have all the data, Jim, but
I'm
from
not
what I
interested- I'm
understand,
just sort of general
what-
thoughts, just, I mean, is
What falls within that?
what falls within that, and why would it be down, and is it on a path to recover? Just in a general sense, I don't need specific numbers, just trying to understand this deficit that we're in.
well, that would be the tax on communications, obviously like the name implies, and what that would be like cell phone, internet, that type of thing. So those services, to the extent that we've lost homes, we've lost the users of those services because they're not there, or it's not habitable,
That's a
habitable.
line item on my utility bill that goes to the state, that the state then kicks back to us,
Yes.
based upon how many folks are utilizing those lines?
Yes.
Okay.
And so to the extent that that's why it dropped so dramatically initially, because we lost so many people online, basically. And so as homes are coming back in, as people are moving back in, as condos are coming back on, all of that then starts to increase. And so it's kind of related to the ad valorem property tax in terms of the units, the buildings, the living spaces that are coming back online.
I just think, again, Joe, I don't expect you to do a specific analysis of the state communications fees, but I do think it would be helpful for people to understand what these various variables are that are creating the structural deficit and how they're trending. In other words, are some of these fees that we'll never get again, or does it just take time to trend back? I just think it would help for us, for planning purposes, to understand, is this gonna get better on its own? Are there steps we need to take? Obviously, we need to take steps to balance our budget, but I'm talking about longer term. Are these all items that are trending positively, or are they?
Well, possibly the folks at home won't see it, but the handout I provided, that might shed some light and maybe help answer some of what the questions you're raising, because what the handout is my forecast, so it shows what is trending,
How that could come back.
and how quickly. So I suppose we could transition to that if you'd like to do that now, to look at that.
And can we make sure, Will, that this gets out so they understand what we're looking at?
Absolutely.
Is it possible that this was already posted on the website? I don't know, because I know I just sent it out last night.
It is, it's under the agenda. If you click on this one.
Yeah,
The
I
spreadsheet.
just sent it out last
Oh,
night.
we'll get it on there momentarily.
It'll
Yes.
be available. So I know this is a handout because it's a lot of columns, but I wanted to kind of present the picture to you. So it's these revenue line items, and there's a second slide that completes this list. But it's all of those same revenue line items, and it shows you where we started pre in FY '22. And then there's the actual for FY '23, '24, '25. I have the budget for '25 because it's pretty close, but it's not, you know, obviously we haven't finished '25, so I don't have a year-to-date figure. So I'm using the budget as a way to calculate what an annual amount would be. Then we have the FY '26 budget, and then we have the forecasted years for FY '27, '28, '29, and '30. So what I've got forecasted out for you for '27, '28, '29, and '30, all of those line items that are not highlighted, I've used a trend formula within Excel that looks at how those revenue line items changed over those years since Hurricane Ian to project out where they're going to continue to go. So it's basically a mathematical formula. I can't guarantee that's going to happen.
So, yeah, so I think the easiest way to say it is basically what you're saying for those of us that like things brought down to
Yeah.
just simple basics. What this is basically showing is, obviously, this doesn't include things that are outside anyone's control, weather-wise or otherwise. But based on the projections, based on mathematical equations, based on trends and things of that, it looks like in 2028, a lot of what we were talking about here in the deficiency in these funds will be tied to our recovery. The more people that come back, the lower those numbers will get.
Yes.
And based on what we're looking at in 2028, it now goes to a positive versus a negative.
Yeah, so the bottom line of all of these figures in 2028, you know, if all of this plays out relatively closely, we will be in a positive. Revenues will exceed expenditures by not much, but I mean, so we'll basically be coming back to break even in 2028. And that's factoring in a 3% annual increase of expenditures for inflation. I looked at the Federal Reserve forecast, and they're projecting out like 2% going that far, but I use 3 just to be conservative, just for health insurance alone, and I mean it's probably going to be more. So, but I use 3, just so you know.
So Joe, that's just general revenue. That's not
Right.
counting putting into emergency fund reserves nor any other funds. Is that correct?
Well, okay, the forecasted expenses, that bottom line that I'm using, it's starting off with this, what we're proposing for the FY '26 budget. You know, I'm starting as the beginning point and then increasing it there 3%. So it does include the $500,000 transfer to the emergency fund that we do propose to have in the FY '26 budget. And of course, if we lower the FY '26 budget by any changes we make between now and when it's approved, that'll further improve the picture.
Joe, as we look at some of the larger items on this list, I see one called the public service tax,
Yes,
which is a tax levied by local governments on the purchase of specific utility services.
yes.
Does that track in terms of how we recover from Ian? Is that in essence what you've got here? Because that's a significant.
It's related to the water, pretty much the water utilities that are charged by, that we charge, but it's a tax that's on that.
It's on your water bill then?
It should be, and
Yep.
then, but depending on as more and more people come in line with water as well, then that would increase, so that's related.
One that kind of confused me a bit was there's something called an administrative charge.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about what that is and how that's trending?
Yeah, part of that is there's an administrative charge that the general fund charges the water department, so that a good portion of it is that. So that's static. That doesn't really change very much. But the other portion of it.
That's built in, when we do a rate case, that would be built into the rate case?
It would be,
Okay.
it would be. But the other piece of that would be, I think, through community development, if I understand correctly. I think they have administrative charges on some of their processes that they add on to the fees, as part of their fees. I don't know the details on that, but
And
that's,
back to the state communication services,
Yes.
which we believe is a line item on your cell phone
Ye-
bill,
internet,
that's
yes.
taken by the state and then kicked back to the local municipality. If you look at the trend line on that, in fiscal year 2022, we received 564,000,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't seem to recover like some of the other categories. I wonder, did the state cut that tax? I mean, would it be possible to have somebody on your staff contact the Public Service Commission here in Florida and see why it's trending the way it is? It looks a little different than some of the other categories. Doesn't seem to be recovering quite that well, and it doesn't even, by fiscal year 30, it doesn't even come close to what it was in 22. That just seems odd.
We
Just
can
for planning purposes, because that seems like it's a significant amount of money, but
And
See that?
you're referring to the public service
the
tax?
state communication
Oh, I'm sorry,
services,
state communication
Yep.
services, okay.
That seems like an odd trend line for that. In fiscal year 30, we're still not back to where we were in 2022. That seems odd, not even close.
And it may be tied to landlines, and maybe that's, it can be used for various types of services, so we can find out exactly what it's
Yeah,
tied
I'm sure the
to.
Public Service Commission could give you that detail.
Yes.
It'd be helpful for planning purposes. Thank you.
Sure.
It would be internet as well, right? That would fall under there?
I mean, theoretically, that's what the tax can be applied to. I don't know for sure how it's being, that we can verify.
And I've noticed over the past few years, Jim, that a lot of condo associations are assuming one contract and dispersing internet, so
Yep,
to speak.
That's how our condos.
So
yeah.
as opposed to each individual one unit having its own internet, the numbers are much smaller, right? You're getting a better deal as a condo association versus each individual homeowner, if you will, having their own. So that might have a play into
Could
why
be,
that
yeah.
number isn't.
Somebody somewhere has to know why.
I would think so, yeah.
But I think that's a
Okay.
possibility.
All right, we'll see what we can find out and shed some light on that. Is there anything else? Oh, and then just to further explain the chart to finish that off. So over on the right side I have my lost revenue calculation. So it follows the same methodology, but I just did it for each of the forecasted years. So really, FY27 should be, if it all goes according to this forecast, should be the last year that we have lost revenue in comparison to Hurricane Ian. And that should be the last year we would have to use the bridge loan.
And these numbers will obviously change depending on discussions through September and when the final budget is adopted,
Yes.
more than likely.
Yes, well, especially the expenditure line item against which all of these revenue line items are compared to, yes, for sure. And this does not include the proposed increase in ad valorem, so that is not a factor in this.
So in essence, what you're saying, or what you're predicting, Joe, and I know it's a prediction, is the structural deficit that we're seeing today would theoretically be gone in 27. Is that what you're saying? I know you're not saying it definitively, but it's what you're predicting?
Well, I mean, it'll be gone in 28. I mean, so
20.
in 28, and that's, yes. It's something that I don't know if it helps or just makes it worse, but it's also important to note what's not in the budget yet, and I think it's been kind of shared in different forms with you, but there is no formal plan like to repay the bridge loan. We were assuming that once we get out of the need to use it, then we would be able to certainly apply any savings towards that, and they would build up quickly. We need to put probably more into the emergency fund, and we'll see where we're at once we can do a more extensive analysis of where we are at today to see what more we might need to add. Because there, as we're moving along, we've been finding out FEMA's not going to reimburse us for as much as we thought on particular projects, so, which means we have to use more of the emergency fund. So I don't know where we're at, like, today.
Use the term emergency fund,
Yes.
that's synonymous with our reserves, is that fair? Or is
Well,
that different?
that's where our emergency reserves are. We have some in the general fund, but that's not really, that's like the last resort to use, but it's primarily in the emergency fund. Yeah. But so we don't have that. And of course, beach renourishment is a huge concern for the island, and there's nothing in this year's budget specifically to contribute towards beach renourishment, to our match of what beach renourishment grants may require of us. So we need to kind of move into a position where we have additional funding from the general fund to contribute to emergency reserve, to contribute to beach renourishment, and then for any other special needs, like for canal dredging, whatever it is you might decide to use general fund revenue for.
Are you getting, do you have a slide on the emergency fund, or?
I do not
No, it's
have
okay.
that.
So I was just gonna ask you on
Yeah.
the emergency fund, obviously you've referenced a number of particular items,
Mhm.
but in terms of just funding our general revenue after a catastrophe, what's your goal for your emergency reserves or emergency fund? Is it to have 3 months? Is it to have 6 months? What's your, I noticed the other day Sarasota's, their goal was to have 3 months of funding in case there was a catastrophe. What is your sort of general goal in your head?
Well, within the general fund, and I'm sorry, I mean, I had
Just
all this
ballpark.
in my, I worked on all of that specifically, but it's not in my head at the moment. But this was like months ago. But I believe we have at least 3 months, if not more, in the general fund, to maintain operations. But in terms of the emergency fund, I think I did that presentation where I calculated how much cash we burned through right after Hurricane Ian before we ever got a penny from anybody. And to me, that was what we should have on hand in case we ever have a repeat of that scenario, so we can make sure we have enough cash on hand for that. So I want to say it was around $4 or $5 million. I don't remember, but I'll definitely pull all that information back up to include in the next presentation.
And I know you're not prepared today to talk about it, but you
Yeah.
said 4 or 5 million would be the goal for that. What do we have
No,
today in that fund?
Well, that's one of my concerns because I don't want to speak publicly on it because I think since I've been gone, I mean, I knew what it was when I was gone and it was okay. But when I run reports now, it doesn't look right. But I think it's just a simple matter of there's some accounting entries that have to be made to kind of get everything back in alignment. So I don't want to alarm anyone by mentioning anything publicly about this or that because it's really too soon for me to
Okay.
speak to that. But that is one of my priorities.
Well, that being the case, and
Yeah.
I respect that, but are we halfway to our goals of getting reserved to the point where you would be comfortable? Are we a quarter of the way? Can you just give us some general perspective, or maybe you can't? I'm
Well,
just
I
asking.
mean, one thing I can say, I know before I left, I don't know, it was a few weeks, one of the last town council meeting, so it must have been in April, I think, because I was here through April 30th. I could see that we were going to be falling short of cash in the emergency fund because we were spending, but nothing's coming from FEMA yet. Nothing's coming. And so at that point, we did borrow.
Before you move on, I want to clarify what you just said because I guarantee you people are going to hear
Yeah.
something different. What you just said and what is important is in order to get reimbursed from FEMA, you have to outlay the capital first.
Exactly.
So it's not that we were just freakishly spending money. It was
No.
to do projects that were
These are all-
approved by FEMA
yes,
to do to get
yes.
reimbursement.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Just
I
wanted
did-
to make sure because people were going to hear.
Okay.
Jim, the other thing too is that no matter what we have today, we're gonna need more tomorrow because costs are gonna go up and everything else. Just
No, I appreciate that. I'm just trying to get a sense of where we're at today and what's our goal tomorrow. What do we need to,
Right.
how much
But-
further do we need to go to get
Right,
to
but
where our comfort level is?
So I just want to add, I appreciate that, but as we look forward, you have to realize that 4 million today is not 4 million tomorrow, nor is it 4 million in 2030, so.
Yep, and
That
I'm not
number's gotta
saying it
go up.
is. Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
saying there's a finite number, but I do think we ought to have some idea of what our goal is.
Absolutely, I
That-
agree.
That's all I'm trying to figure out what it is, and it sounds like you've got some work to do, just,
Yes,
and
and
that's fine, that's fine. We can discuss that at our budget hearing. I'm just curious where we are, and I agree with you, Scott, the reserve piece is really important, but I also want to give people a sense as to, there are states around the country are debating how much is enough for their rainy day fund. Some states have more than enough in their rainy day fund, and there's a big fight about, and that's a nice problem to have, by the way. But, what is that goal? And I, obviously with inflation, and that's always changing, but what is the goal, so we know what we're meeting and how we can plan accordingly?
And I don't think, quite honestly, my opinion is 3 months is enough. I mean, if you just look at how much was spent in the first month alone after the storm, that 3 months is not enough. If anybody looks at their own personal finances after the storm, 3 months would not have been enough.
And I think maybe we're talking about two different things, or at least in my mind, what we have in the general fund is about 3 months, so that's just to keep normal operations. The emergency fund is a totally separate thing, and that's where we're talking about we need millions more, and that's much more than 3 months. It's to cover those initial outputs of cash expenditures to cover all the emergency response. So that's a different figure. And what I was going to mention is right before I left, we could see that the money was going out faster than FEMA was able, because it takes so long to get it approved by FEMA. I was seeing that we were going to be short $4 million at least. And so we borrowed $4 million from the bridge loan to put into the emergency fund to make sure there was enough cash in there. It was just a cash loan. It wasn't to literally pay for things, because we were expecting the money from FEMA. We just didn't have the cash yet. So we borrowed or loaned $4 million from the bridge loan to put in the emergency fund. But even after having done that, I think it's exceeded that. I mean, we need to put more into just to break even in terms of cash. And once the reimbursements start coming back from FEMA, we'll be okay again. It's just, it's just this interim period that I'm concerned about, because I want to make sure that I'm up to date with where we really are, so that we can make whatever recommendations we might need to make, or to replenish the emergency fund, at least temporarily, because we're right on the next hurricane season. We want to make sure we have enough. I mean, and it's all there. It's just where is it, and where do we need to move things to be in the right positions so that we're ready. So I'm not in any way alarmed. I just need to get a handle on where everything is so that we can readjust as we need to.
And you'll likely have that information by the time we have our first budget meeting in September.
Oh, yes, sir, because that's the emergency fund is one of the funds. We have all the funds we need to present to you, and so part of that is doing this analysis.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So, did you have any other questions on the forecast, or is that sufficient coverage of that?
Anyone have questions? Thanks, Jill. No, we're good on
Okay.
that.
And then I think, were there any more questions regarding the lost revenue calculation here? And if you do think of any other line items you'd like to be further explained, we can have, I'd be happy to research those for you. So you can go to the next slide, Josh. And this is just to show you where we're at with the bridge loan. So with the additional 1.4 million that it looks like we need to use to balance the FY26 budget, the total amount of the loan we'll have used by then is almost 9.3 million. So that leaves us with 2.6 million available. But it doesn't look like we'll need to use that much of it going forward. So that should be the end of it after next year.
So when the end of it occurs next year,
Well, actually, you've got $500,000 for next year, 27.
Correct. I didn't you're correct, Scott, and I didn't say it clearly enough, but yes, after next year's use, then,
Okay.
He did say the word about, though.
Okay.
okay, you're correct.
So then, when we reach that point,
Mhm.
with the legislative appropriation that the mayor referenced earlier, what is our actual debt obligation to pay off the loan? Assuming it's not forgiven.
Well, okay, if you factor in, what was it, the 542 into that, so that's about
Ballpark.
9.8
1.7.
versus, so it's about, we'll have 1.1 million left. We have, like, say, 7.6 of revenue placement, so that's 8.7. So
1.5.
we'll have about 3.2 million, I think, and this, maybe if I calculate it right, what we have to repay.
And that interest, the
And then
interest
the
on that one?
interest, there probably, there's at least $1 million of interest, so
Is that
maybe.
interest 10%?
Oh, you mean what?
What's the interest on that amount you just referenced?
It's 10%, but does
10%.
is the 10% started from day one, or is it kicks in
Oh,
2030?
I see what you're asking. The 10% amount of interest, the interest rate on the loan,
Uh-huh.
that does not kick in until, is it year 2033, when
33.
the loan is due.
Okay, so,
And then
so
it's
right
from
now it's
that
interest,
point-
right now, excuse me for interrupting, but right now it's interest-free.
Yes,
So
yes,
if we pay it back before 2033, we're good, but if any remaining balance is at 10%
that's correct. And
of
so,
the unpaid portion, not the original principal, correct?
Remaining
correct. It's whatever the remaining unpaid principal balance is, correct.
Okay.
That's a good clarification.
Yes.
So, just even more granular, so do we just sit on the legislative appropriation and gain interest on it? Well, or do we go
I
ahead and pay it
think,
right
I mean,
away?
that's one, I think that could be a valid way to go, because we'll have it, it'll be earning interest, it'll be sufficient, there'll be a sufficient amount to pay it back, so that would free us of the obligation, or the restriction, I should say, to not be able to use any non-ad valorem revenues for capital, so it's kind of like the best of both worlds, but I don't know how long that'll last, because at some point, something may change.
Right.
And they may require something different of us, so.
And just for our re-edification, before Ian, or right after Ian, all our interest-bearing CDs were garnishing like 0.75 interest, and we moved those around to get closer to 4 or 5, correct?
That's true, and for, like, I think the previous fiscal year was at 5%,
Yeah.
so now it's more like 4.5, maybe 4.3 right now,
Yeah, I
but,
think so.
it's been very good, interest rate, return on investment.
Yeah.
Now, we have other, federal funds that we are required to, pay any interest that we earn on those balances to the state, I think it is. And so that is what we've been doing on those. The bridge loan is just different. They don't require us to do that.
All right, thank you.
And I think is that the last slide, Josh? Or is there one more? Maybe it's the question slide.
There's
Oh,
more.
no. Oh, there is more. I forgot about this part. Okay, so this is to help any residents who are concerned about what is the impact of a potential millage rate increase on them. And this was put together by Dr. Kohler, so we're grateful for her assistance in providing this, and we just put it in a presentation format. So this is to take an example of a $500,000 market value home. The top part is if there's a homestead exemptions, the bottom part is if there are no homestead exemptions. So with the millage rate increase, the difference, the total increase in terms of property tax revenue on the 500,000 market value home with homestead exemptions is $106 a year, or $8.83 a month. If there are no homestead exemptions, the impact is a little bit higher. It's $132.50 for the year, which equates to $11.04 per month. And then we have a second slide with $1 million market value example. So again, the top part represents an example if they if they do have homestead exemptions, and then the bottom has if they don't. So if they do have homestead exemptions, a $1 million market value home, the proposed increase in millage rate would have an impact of $238.50 per year, which would be $19.88 per month. If they do not have homestead exemptions, the impact would be $265 per year, or $22.08 per month.
I think this is a good, I know we say it a lot, but a lot of people don't understand it when they look at their trim notice. That last year was 6.2% of your trim notice actually went to the town of Fort Myers Beach. I think that's what you're trying to illustrate here, because there's a lot of new homeowners here that maybe don't understand it. And for those that are listening that want a good example, you did a really nice pie chart last year's budget. If you go to page 26 of last year's budget, it's very easy to find on the town's website. It shows you the percentage breakdown of what your total overall millage rate goes to. For example, 45.4% goes to the school board. So almost 50% of what you pay in your property taxes go to the school. And then it goes from there to Lee County and goes on down the line. But we say it all the time, but I think when people see the headlines in the news, 26% increase, it's not, if you're paying $10,000 a year, it's not 26% of $10,000. It's 26% of 6%, 6.2% of $10,000.
We have, I think the next slide might be represent what you just were describing. Could you go to the next slide, Josh? Oh no, I'm sorry. It's probably the slide after that. Thank you.
Yeah,
This is the presentation that the mayor was just referring to, but it's in, instead of a pie chart, it's a list. So it shows that town of Fort Myers Beach is 6.2% of a person's resident's total tax bill, and it just lists the ones that are more or less than that.
So the school is 26.6% plus 18.8%.
So to give you an example, I've done the math for you. 68.8% of what you pay in your property taxes go to Lee County and the school board. So when you see headlines sell. So when people see 26%, they think, or some think, 26% means I'm paying 26% of whatever my trim notice says. That's not the case. And I know we have to say it over and over, and people still don't quite understand it, but.
I think on Monday I mentioned my property tax bill. I don't have it in front of me now, but I paid roughly, out of my property tax bill of $7,000 and change, $3,000 of that went to the schools. And that $435 went to the town of Fort Myers Beach. So it's an important distinction. I mean, it doesn't mean we don't mean to minimize what
Correct.
we're talking about today,
Right.
but I think we need to put it into context.
And some people are visual, that's why I brought up that, if you go back to last year's budget, you can see the pie chart, and it's
It's very good.
yeah, when you see that visual, it's a percentages, but when you see a visual, it makes a big difference.
We'll be sure to have the pie chart. I think, Josh, if you could go back to the previous slide, this was just a presentation of what, for anyone who cares about this is where our millage rate stands, where it was in FY25 versus what's proposed in the various communities around us in comparison to those.
Joe, folks look at this, and it's an important piece of information, but at the same time, in fairness, these other municipalities have a police department, right? How significant is the police department piece of the puzzle when we compare these numbers?
It's probably fairly significant. I'd have to see their budget to know how it is in comparison, but the police department is very expensive.
Yeah, just in full, I still think we have one of the best rates in Southwest Florida, but it is, just to be fair, I think some of these folks have additional expenses to their police department.
Yes.
Well, that'd be everybody above us, but everybody below us doesn't have their own police.
Benita?
Yeah, but the other two below us didn't get clobbered by Ian.
Exactly. They didn't have the damage that we had to build back.
Yeah, and the rates themselves are probably, that's just a piece of the puzzle. There's the actual revenue that they collect.
Based on the size.
Right, they must have a larger tax base possibly to generate more revenue. So I think that may be getting to the end. Yes, okay. Is there anything else?
John, any more questions for Joe?
I don't think so.
Vice Mayor?
No, thank you.
Council Whitson?
So I do have a question. So I know that these last two pages are general fund.
Yeah.
Where do impact fees, for all of the approvals that we've made and everything, where do they fall into? And more importantly, when are we getting our impact fee finalized and moving forward? It's been sitting out there for 9 months. I know that's in the works, but I think there needs to be a hard press put on that consulting firm to get that back to us and get it moving. But where does the impact fees fall in here?
The impact fees are within their own fund. I think there's road impact and park impact fees. They're individual funds. So, and those revenues can only be used for specific kinds of improvements associated with each one. You know, there's like, the string that's attached to that is, I think, if I remember right, one of the last meetings I was at, I think Jason was presenting some update on the impact fees. I think he may have said something like, they only will generate 25% of what we need, and we need to generate the other 75% of whatever projects we want to fund with impact fees. So, you know, that's yet one more thing we would have to add to the general fund budget, is how are we going to fund our 75% of the impact fee projects. So it's just, that's further in the future. It's not an immediate need, but it was something that just stuck in my ear, because he did mention, well, you could do it through bonds and that, which is true, but we're not allowed to borrow anything while we have not yet have enough set aside to pay the bridge loan. So, but, you know, we're getting closer, you know, and then all those options will start opening up.
Anything else?
No, I'm good.
How quickly can you get a handle on the emergency reserve fund? Can you get it like by the end of August, so we have time to digest it before
Well,
our
I would
meeting?
certainly hope so by then, but yes, that's like my
He
top
was
priority.
thinking more like tomorrow.
No, I wasn't.
No, but it's just that there's, I just have to make sure that all the pieces that feed into that, you know, there's a lot of, I don't want, I shouldn't speak too generally. There are pieces that are missing that haven't been addressed yet, because nobody knew to address them, or they didn't have the capacity to address them yet. So, but now that we're back and I know what to look for and focus on, we can kind of redirect our efforts onto that, just to make sure that we're rapidly coming up to date where we need to be on those pieces. And then I think, you know, I should be able to tell, because we need all that as well for the budget presentations that are coming up and finalizing the budget, because it all feeds into the budget.
Okay. Well, great job. Thank you. I appreciate the 1 a.m. email, as
Oh,
always.
sure.
Yeah, really.
And as always, I mean, I just coming in at the end, you know, it was all the department heads, they
No,
are
they
the
did a great
ones
job.
who put it all together, and Cassandra compiling it, so I just get to present it.
Cassandra, thank you.
Yeah.
You didn't get a shout out yet.
Yeah, a
but
lot of hard work
Right,
done,
job.
but
a lot of work.
it's nice to know that you've got a good team working with you to help alleviate some of your
Yes.
stress.
Oh, absolutely. I was sitting with her while she was doing the presentation, thinking, I never had any help like this before. This is incredible. So-
Don't walk off yet, Joe. I think
I'm
Vice
sorry.
Mayor has another
I
question. I
forgot
believe.
one quick question, Joe. And you
Some
may have
later.
gone through this in your slides, but people are paying a lot of permitting fees right now.
Yes.
And I guess my question, just a general question, are the permitting fees covering all the costs of the permitting? In other words, that's a dedicated fund. So when you pay a permit fee, it can't be used for general revenue, it can't
No.
be used for stuff, except within the permitting realm. It's its own dedicated fund. Is that cash flowing? Is there a surplus in that fund? How are things going with all these permitting fees coming in?
Okay.
In general.
Well, I would say in general, I think it's a positive direction, but so as the fees ramp down, you know, we'll still continue to have a need for that. So we'll be able to, that would be where we can take advantage of any, I mean, if you want to call it surplus that we may have collected, we could then start tapping into that rather than raising fees for that building fund itself. But it's been a positive cash flow going in there. And I know especially, I just was looking at the audit, I can't quote the figures, but it definitely was, as of the end of FY24, which would be almost a year ago now, there was much more revenue coming in than expenditures going out. So it is paying for itself.
Are you allowed to develop a surplus in a dedicated fund that you can use when things slow down?
Well, no, I mean, we'll have to look at, I mean, that's what you have to look at, you have to look at it carefully, because we may have to actually consider decreasing fees. If that's, I mean, that's one of the
I guess
possibilities.
that's my question, yeah.
So if it turns out where we have much more than we could possibly spend, I mean, then certainly we have to cut the fees, because you cannot just build up surplus. But if we need to maintain services, and if we can avoid increasing fees by using what may have built up until we kind of reach an equilibrium, you know, that's probably how it will play out. But we don't know until we do that kind of analysis.
Okay, thank you.
You're
And
welcome.
those funds can also be used, I think, to the manager's point earlier, back to the hiring, you know, if it can bring in, if we're seeing a bottleneck in floodplain
Oh, yes,
reviews, or we're seeing
absolutely.
environmental, things like that, those funds could be used to help offset that, to bring that time frame down to a more manageable time frame for the residents.
Yes.
And later, to your point, you can adjust staffing at that point to meet where the demand is, or lower fees if that's the case.
Yes.
Yes.
The things I have for you, Joe, and for staff, I would like to challenge you. It was brought up, I believe, by Counselor Woodson and also by Counselor King. You know, we are a tourist town, but yet we really don't have a lot of things in place other outside the TDC funding, or I believe it's 5% or something, and then we get a minimal amount of that back that goes into the county, and then we get a little bit back to the TDC. I would like to explore, at least see some options of what it would be to have some sort of fee that, you know, the visitors are shouldering some of these things that we're talking about versus just being on the residents and the businesses. It's probably not gonna be a popular thing to discuss, but I think it's something that we should certainly look at as we're seeing the trends that we're seeing through tourists coming in, through short-term rentals and all these other things. I think we should really look at how can we impose a fee, or at least have a discussion about it,
Mm-hmm.
of offsetting some of these costs that we're talking about with this deficiency spending that Jim was relating to on Monday, to see if there's a path forward to help shoulder some of that burden. So it's not just specifically on our residents and our businesses, but it's being shared by those that come in and have the impact on public safety and the beaches and the roads and the sidewalks and all the other things that, you know, take a pretty good beating when it comes to high season, and those that come, we certainly want them to come. Fireworks, all those kinds of things. If there's a way that we could get some options from staff to look into that maybe other municipalities are doing. I've been trying to do some research on it as well to see what other people do to help shoulder some of that burden. I would appreciate seeing that when we come to budget talks.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, yesterday, to expand on that, I did share with the town manager and his staff some things I had come up with that I don't know how feasible they are, but options to at least be explored for different revenue streams.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have some options out there that the public can digest, we can digest, and see if there's something policy-wise we could put in place to help with this.
Yes, and if any of you have suggestions to be researched or have researched them, please help us along by sharing that, because I don't know that we have the same connections or are exposed to the same things that you've seen or might be aware of. That would help a great deal.
Well, Will probably has a list going on now, because I too shared
Oh, okay.
a couple of other ideas that we have to research before we want to make anything public, but
Okay,
yeah, I'm sure you have quite the list going for us.
very good.
Probably some overlap as well, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
We like the input.
Okay.
Also, Mayor, I'll share that next week at the Florida League of Cities Conference, one of the agenda items is going to be about the state moving away from ad valorem tax revenue. So I'll be interested to see what that discussion curtails, or entails, I guess.
Yeah, I think everybody in the state of Florida
Yeah.
is eager to hear what that's all about. All right, thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, our next, as soon as I have my computer back up here. Our next item is the emergency temporary placement permits. Town manager?
Yes, so thank you, Mr. Mayor. counselors, we've been actively working through, as we've talked in other forums, you know, our response to the FEMA CAV and the continuous effort of the town to work our way back into the community rating system and try to continue to improve our standing in NFIP, but really just in general, our overall compliance with floodplain management standards, FEMA and state code, statutes. And as part of the effort, we've been, since the CAV, having daily discussions with the CAV team that was here, and I've been in regular correspondence with the FEMA Region 4 leaders on a proposed way ahead as we receive feedback from some of our CAV responses of the list of 252 and the discussions that I mentioned. I had the staff work on a proposed way ahead, a draft of a resolution for an emergency temporary placement permit going forward to take us, as I mentioned previously to all of you, as I was seeking a path beyond September 23rd, beyond the end of the 3 years since Ian, knowing that our community, for our economic vitality and just our residents' safety and security as they try to rebuild their homes, we needed a path forward beyond that. We do. But we need a path that's compliant, so we don't end up in a similar situation with FEMA regulations or floodplain management situations. And this is we want to propose as a way ahead, which would include a continuation of some of the standards everybody's familiar with for those temporary structures, trailers, and recreational vehicles to either self deploy themselves out in the case of an RV, but also movable by a light-duty truck, quick disconnects, highway ready and registered. And beyond that, our discussions with FEMA, as well as what we just think would be good practices for emergency response and safety in our town, is to include a verifiable emergency evacuation plan by the owner of that structure. And we're going to add these to our permitting process for these temporary placement permits that would, again, be verified by our code team, verified by through the permitting process, and allow our residents and our business owners to continue to use those structures in a way that keeps us compliant, but also in a way that puts us in a well-standing position to respond to emergencies if we have to deal with that as a community again. I feel very good about this proposed resolution. What I can't say at this time is that it has a FEMA stamp of approval. I have been in dialogue with the Region 4 leadership, and I have shared my draft proposal with them. And I've received, I think, feedback which makes me comfortable that going forward, this will put us in a better position than we have been in. But again, they're just not willing to give me, say, yes, we approve that policy. And I don't think we'll get that, to be honest with you. What I do feel is that based on some of the feedback that we have received, we have started to receive some feedback from the Region 4 team on the list of 252. Dr. Cole has done a great job leading the team in responding to those CAB lists. We are down to less than 30, I think, that, as of this morning, that we need to input into the system and send to FEMA with our responses on how we're managing those properties as a town, and as the residents are providing us feedback as well. So far, the feedback, majority of those that we've entered in, that we've received responses to, and transparently, we've only received responses, feedback on 15 of the 230 or so that the team has sent up to them. But of those 15, 13 were now, for lack of a better way of saying it, taken off the list because they approve of how we answered those 252. The other two were just, they just asked for more information. So I'm confident that we'll get those removed from the list as well. If that trend continues, I don't think 15 is enough to establish a trend. But if that trend continues, again, I think my confidence will continue to increase that this, because incorporated in those responses that the team has been sending to FEMA is basically what I just told you, that this is how we're going to manage these types of temporary structures going forward as a town. And as I've continually said to FEMA, judge us by our policies, procedures, and practices here that are in compliant, as FEMA even told us themselves, that are in compliant with their standards. Don't judge us by any other standard. If you judge us by that, we're going then we'll be in the place where they want us to be and where we want to be. So was the draft included in here? I believe it was. I believe you all have. That's the draft of the temporary placement application. Oh, I don't think we have it drafted yet.
I think if you can just cover the highlights on it. I mean, it's a lot of it is similar.
A lot of it
you've gone
similar
through.
to the previous resolution. We're going to add language, as I mentioned. We're going to add more clarity on those three main things, which a lot of the people in the community are familiar with: towable with the light-duty truck, quick disconnects from utilities, road-ready, licensed, registered, inflated tires, ready to go. We're going to add in a verifiable 4-hour emergency evacuation plan. And another piece, thank you, Dr. Grohl, another important piece to mention that is why we need to continue this forward is that many of our residents still are in a position of hardship. And we have discussed that with FEMA as a necessary, as a valid reason to continue granting these permits. And we'll clearly identify those categories of hardship and how we'll factor that into the permit application, such as, and we're still working through some of the language as a team, such as, they're a homeowner trying to rebuild their home. They're still waiting on all the insurance monies that they need to do to continue that. They're a homeowner or a business owner who is still in a similar position and needs a way to continue operating their business. They have permission of either they own the property that they're operating on, or they have permission of the property owner to operate the business on the property. What am I leaving
Really, if
out?
I remember reading in there was something about one trailer per property versus.
One trailer per property, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. One trailer per property, that's already a requirement. That will continue forward. And in some cases, that's an example of some of the cases that we have to respond to FEMA on. Some of the properties were on there, and we're, again, if we haven't already communicated with the property owners, if they get with us, we'll get with them and tell them why. And there's a very few of them that fell into that category, but that's an example that we're going to clarify a little more clearly going forward. Am I leaving? That's about it. We don't have, we don't have the draft resolution prepared yet. That's what we want to bring forward at the next council meeting. I wanted to give you an update, and that's the process that we're going forward and how I feel fairly confident that that's going to help us go beyond the August 8th deadline tomorrow and the September 23rd deadline previously set by the council.
And Will, if you haven't already, to take it even a step further, I know that there's the definition of being able to be, there's ways that people, I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it. You could say I have ownership of a trailer. I own a flatbed trailer that is licensed for the road, but that trailer itself is licensed for the road. Not anything that you put on it and work out of. You see where I'm kind of going with this? What I'm trying to get at is the structure as it was designed is roadworthy, not because I think, as we all know, there's been some issues with changing the way something was built. Like if I buy a Cadillac and turn it into a monster truck, it's not what it was designed to do, right? You can do it, doesn't mean that that's what it was designed to do. So I think it's important to try to get some sort of clarification in there, or maybe go into even more granular into what a licensed trailer means, just for clarity for, God forbid we ever have to go through this again.
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. We'll definitely include that. I do know, and I think I understand what you're referring to, a modification of a trailer, which would, you know, fit all the criteria I identified. Any modifications thereof
Sure.
would not meet, but we need to clarify that, definitely. I agree.
I appreciate it. John, got any
Any questions?
questions for town manager?
No, I don't think so.
Vice Mayor?
I actually had a chance to go over the form with Frankie prior to the meeting, so I don't have any questions.
When you say form, you're referring to the temporary
The
application?
yep,
Yeah.
yep.
This is a draft of what would be the new temporary placement application, as where we're changing some language, we're removing some language that's outdated, or will not apply going forward, and adding some language, if you see towards, on the final page, the determinations of significant hardship, things like that, that we'll add in.
Yeah, I mean, the more clarity we can give in the ordinance, the less interpretation it leaves would be the ultimate goal, I would think.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I agree.
Anything else, Vice Mayor? Counselor Woodson?
So I have a question on timing. So obviously, August 8th is tomorrow. We're still working with FEMA with that type of thing. So I'm assuming, get in trouble with that, I'm assuming that we're not moving trailers by tomorrow.
That's correct.
But our deadline that we have stated is September 23rd. So if we are going to make exceptions for people under hardship or anything like that, what are you thinking of timing? You don't want to wait until the 23rd to then renew things. When do you think we'd be ready to look at applications or consider timing for things, or, yeah, for the process to continue so that people aren't sitting there on the 23rd, they have nothing in process, and now they have to go?
Yes, thank you for the question. If the council passes the resolution at the next council meeting, it would be our goal to immediately then move into a permitting process with those folks. I think I need to discuss further with staff and with legal counsel on what would be an appropriate timeline to allow for people to apply for that, because I realize that really only leaves 2 weeks, from that time to.
You use the term apply, you mean reapply for some
Yes,
folks?
reapply.
Okay.
Yes. And we'll continue our discussions with FEMA as we get more feedback. I'll communicate back with you on a new date. We're going to need to establish a date, and as you asked the question, Councilor Woodson, it made me think that 2 weeks, even for my staff, as we were talking earlier on the efficiencies we've made across the staff, would be unrealistic, I think, to just plan on doing that within a 2-week period. And again, it goes back to, I believe we'll be operating properly under the FEMA standards, and if we have the policies, processes, and procedures in place, then we'll be good, and we'll set a reasonable time for residents and business owners to be able to reapply, to come into compliance, or to remain in compliance in many cases.
And I also think, obviously, if they are in the process of building, we're gonna be able to verify all of that through our permits that are in place,
Yes.
and you'll see their building going on and that type of thing. But
Yes.
if they are waiting for insurance funds, if they have not done anything, if they're sitting there with a demo kind of thing, are there going to be things in place that they have to provide proof of applications with things, or, I just think that
Yes.
needs to be laid out for
Yes.
people exactly. If you want to apply, but you're not in the permitting process, why do you want to apply, and how can you prove that? And
Yes.
I would assume that FEMA would want that as well.
I agree, and we'll add that.
Great, thank you, that's all I have.
Scott?
I have 2 questions. In B1, it said additional units may only be allowed with approval by the town council. Shouldn't that be you, Mr. Town Manager? What would be the process if it was by the town council?
I appreciate the recommendation. I would, again.
Because
also
as Councilor Woodson said, if somebody's, in between council meetings, we can't get it posted, that's just delaying the process. I'd like it a little streamlined so they're not waiting on our buy-in. Is that possible?
I'll take the.
So I can comment.
Thank you.
I'd really like to. I know that council, for a couple of meetings in the past, has expressed a lot of concern about what is going to happen to our residents who are still living in their RVs or temporary structures with this looming September 23rd deadline coming up. And for whatever reason, I keep hearing Councilman or Councilwoman Woodson's voice in my head. It's like, what are we gonna do? What are we
That's
gonna do?
scary.
What are we gonna do? At several meetings, as well as, others on council. And so I took a look at what your current ordinance provides, because we do know that the governor's state of emergency concerning Hurricane Ian is going to expire. At that point, the question becomes, what legal authority does this property owner have to be on their piece of property in an RV or a temporary structure? And so from a legal perspective, your first source of authority would be your zoning code. Well, you don't have any zoning district in the town that allows anyone to live in their mobile home. You do have ordinances in your code that talk about temporary uses, and those type of temporary uses are more for special events like the Christmas tree lot. That's a temporary use. And then what you have is you have an ordinance that had been adopted in 2023 that provided for temporary placement permits. And that ordinance was adopted very quickly by my predecessor after Hurricane Ian hit. Subsequent to that, you amended that in 2024, and our firm, we were part of that. What we did, and it's on page 10 of your materials if you're following, we looked at your current ordinance that gives you that framework, that gives you that legal authority to authorize having an RV on a piece of property and having somebody living there in emergency situations. And you basically identify when that emergency begins and when that emergency ends. Your code has has 3 specific periods of time when it ends. And applying your code to our current situation, our set of facts, it would end on September 23rd. However, by resolution, you can extend those permits for 6-month increments, which is what your current framework allows. So the resolution that you would be bringing forth is to authorize the extension of these RVs, travel trailers, whatever, consistent with your floodplain regulations, which is all the information that the town manager and the deputy have provided to you.
Nancy, I have a
So-
question with that before you move on. So because you're changing the ordinance, would it be?
We're not changing the ordinance.
You're changing the wording, right? Or,
No, it's already there.
It's a resolution.
but what I think what the town manager is talking about is adding things to it to,
So,
it
so
is
I
changing
just
the
got
ordinance.
this today, and so this would be consistent with what's in the ordinance. I have had conversations with Will and with Tracy regarding it. The things that he's talking about as far as how to extend it, there is language in your existing code that talks about that. And I think the resolution that somebody's gonna be drafting, I don't know if it's me or staff, it will authorize you to extend the existing permits
Okay.
that are compliant with FEMA. That extension would be on a case-by-case basis, where the individual would come to the town manager, because in your existing ordinance, he would have the authority to make those extensions based on all these factors that they have identified for you, such as the emergency evacuation plan, such as Councilor Woodson brought up, are they getting a permit? Are they in that process? Are they waiting for insurance? So he has that ability. Now, your ordinance also basically allows the property owner to come to you in the event they disagree with what he says. You know, he may say, no, you haven't gone to the permitting process, and they say, yes, we have. They have that appeal right in your existing code. So to summarize my comments is basically you have a structure in place to address this situation, and it is triggered by your resolution, which we will bring to you, to extend those permits as provided in your ordinance for these type of reasons, which has been elaborated, and although not put into writing with FEMA, by FEMA, we could require at the local level. So we're,
I think you cleared up what I was getting at.
Right, but
So your extension would be based on the new criteria, or the wording of the criteria from the resolution that would potentially be passed, not based on what it was issued to you for. That's what I'm trying to get at. So what it was issued to you for 2.5 years ago
correct.
is not going to
yes.
be the same as what your renewal is going to be now, and you will have to adhere to what the new.
That is correct.
Okay.
However, in your existing ordinance, you already have some criteria
Correct.
in there that is duplicative
But what
of
I'm
we
trying to get
have.
out there is if this resolution is passed, simply because you were approved with the temporary permit 2 years ago.
Is not an
and things-
automatic.
It's not an automatic. It's going to have to adhere to what the new resolution would be.
Correct. Well, it would be based on the decision that's made by the town manager, consistent with the resolution that you all
Right.
will direct him to do.
In some cases, an extension of a permit, in some cases, a new permit.
An extension with possible conditions on it.
Correct.
Which would include the evacuation plan, which would include making sure that they are flood compliant. Because I did review all the documentation, the written documentation from FEMA that has been provided. They never said that recreational vehicles or residential uses are prohibited. They said non-compliant structures. And when the town, right after Hurricane Ian, when it started issuing these permits, it basically put too many in there. So now it's been narrowed down to only the ones that are compliant with the FEMA regulations. And again, this application, yes, it needed to be updated, but it needs to be consistent with what's in our code.
Yes.
Your statement is correct, but it's my opinion that the definition of what a unsafe structure has changed, or what we've been told is an unsafe structure.
Non-compliant,
Non-compliant structure has changed.
in what way? For
We-
instance.
For
we-
instance, a utility trailer that could be towed with a light-duty vehicle that's
I think we could make that assumption based on the list of the 252 that they sent us.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
right. So now we have more information because of what the town has had to suffer through as to what is viewed as compliant and what's non-compliant. But your code just talks about like the non-compliant structures.
correct.
So we have a much narrower perspective of what we can use our emergency temporary placement permits for. Before, we thought it was a bigger universe, but now it's much more narrow because of the good work that, you know, administration has done with FEMA, trying to narrow down what is actually gonna be permitted and what is not.
Well, and I think, and I certainly do not want to speak for the town manager, but I think that is some of the frustration, is what we deem is a compliant structure based on what we interpret the FEMA regulations to be. They will never say, yes, it's gonna be, that's a compliant structure, or it's not. So it's very hard to enforce or do things. We could pass all the resolutions we want, unless we can get FEMA to say, that is satisfactory to us, which I don't think I agree with the town manager they will ever say. We will certainly continue to push to get that. What is the actual definition of an unsafe structure,
non-compliant.
or non-compliant structure, whatever you wanna call it?
It's, you know, is the glass half full or half empty? So they're not telling us what's non-compliant, but they're telling us what is compliant. So we can just try to bring the requests and put them into the silo for compliance as best as we can.
That's what I was getting at.
So getting back to my question, it still says with approval of a waiver by the town council on B1.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's consistent with what our our code is. I know that they were trying to get something to you today, because this item is very time-sensitive.
Well, if, whether time sensitive or not, I don't want that in there. I'd rather have it be the town manager, not the town council.
Well, yeah, I see what you're saying there. It's, some of the issue I had with that one was, if it's a duplex, and you're talking about one trailer or one temporary use permit per property, if it's a duplex, now are they not in noncompliance because it's two separate addresses, but it's on the same property? But our code says, or our resolution says you can only have one per property versus one per address.
It's a draft. We
Yeah.
still have to make sure that it's in line with our ordinance.
Yeah,
as
I
Nancy was
think the
saying.
ordinance does have
Yeah.
only one.
Right.
I
And
believe so.
if I may continue, the restriction 4, only verified residents of Fort Myers Beach, well, I don't know every property and every deal, but I do know of one, Mojo's, the owner of that property doesn't live here, he lives in the Keys, but the tenant is, he's not even a resident, so can we?
But I think our ordinance, if I'm not mistaken, Nancy, refers to if, something about if you have approval from the property owner.
Yes, because
But
you're,
this restriction here says only verified residents.
exactly, but again, this was a great effort, and
It's
I
a
do
draft.
appreciate it.
Okay.
It's a draft.
All right.
It's a
And-
draft, I say
No,
property
no, no,
owner
no.
or resident,
It's
yeah,
fine.
but-
We will,
Yeah.
we will take this. This is, the next level based on what we had. But this will have to now be consistent with our existing ordinance, which there might be a couple little places where it is not. But also, the delegation of the decision-making power to the town manager is still subject to appeal, to you.
That's fine.
So,
Yes.
and I think that that's a very important key factor for, the residents. So he doesn't, although he has the authority, it's not unlimited. There's a check and balance.
Yeah.
Nancy, if I could just take this up 10,000 feet for folks who might be watching. A few weeks ago, it appeared that FEMA told us that all temporary structures on Fort Myers Beach are non-compliant,
Yes.
and we're just now discussing an application for temporary structures. How would you explain that to somebody who's watching?
Again, it was the use of the term non-compliant structures, the fact that we did issue these permits immediately after Ian, but we issued them to a very large grouping of potential structures or vehicles or whatever. And FEMA then came and, back in July of, I think, last year, said, no, a lot of those, like the shipping containers, the Connexes, those are non-compliant, but they were in that big field. So now what we've been able to do, working with FEMA and having that dialogue and those communication, is to try to narrow that field to know what is permitted. And what seems to be permitted are residential RVs under certain circumstances, if they are towable by the truck, and I think management can go into more detail than I can about it. So we can.
So what's changed is, in essence, we've gone from a blanket approval to a case-by-case approval, which
Correct.
seems to please
Well,
FEMA.
I don't think there was a blanket approval. I disagree with that statement. I think
I
when we,
don't mean it as a pejorative.
yeah, I think when we made this decision shortly after the storm to allow temporary use, the intent was for a trailer for people to live in. If you go back and watch a meet, that was the intent. And much like a lot of things, when you give people an inch, they will take a mile. And I think part of the reason that we're trying to back and unwind this is, have we ever given a temporary use permit for a Connex box to sit on a property?
No.
I don't think we have. So my point is, you've got a temporary use to have a trailer, an RV on your property, which then extended into construction trailers, because they felt that was under the umbrella of their temporary use. And I think that's what we're trying to unwind.
It is, but I think that immediately after the storm, people did bring pods or storage, trying to get rid of the damaged things that they had and things that were not salvageable and putting them in there. I mean, it was a crazy time. Or fortunately, whatever, I was not here to go through that. And I really have to commend staff, although FEMA didn't really approve with what they were doing, but they were in a MASH unit. I mean, they were trying to help your residents as much as they could, not really having a lot of guidance, in that immediate period. I believe your ordinance was first adopted in March of 2023, so that gave them a couple of months to try to figure out, okay, did we do our permitting? You know, which ones can we allow to go forward? Which ones can we not? And a lot of those initial temporary placement permits have already been revoked because FEMA has told us that they're non-compliant structures. But there still are a few out there, and the few that are out there that happen to be RVs that seem to comply with your flood regulations, consistent with your existing ordinance, I think are permissible from a legal perspective.
Another, and I know we're getting into the weeds with this, but I think we have to at this point. One of the things that I've noticed is how our codes in this state of emergency don't have checks and balances. And we all know there's a property on the island that has a temporary use trailer that has now been surrounded by a permitted fence that is encasing this temporary trailer, which to me would signify they have no intention of moving that trailer out of there anytime soon. So I don't know if there's a way that we can put this in there to, what I'm trying to get at is do you need a fence around your temporary trailer and a above-ground pool? Do you need those things, or how are the?
Well, that's a case-by-case determination. If they have one of these temporary permits that's gonna, or emergency temporary placement permits that's gonna expire on September 23rd, they need to make an appointment with the town manager to discuss an extension. And if they don't do that, they have no legal right to have that structure or that vehicle on that property.
But I guess what I'm getting at is how can we be proactive in stopping some of this that has happened by, you meet all the requirements to receive your ETTP, for shorting it down. You meet your requirement, but now you come in 4 months later and apply for a fence permit. Where is there to stop things like that, to say, you know, but you don't have any plans in place for construction of a new property? You just have a temporary use permit with nothing in the porthole supporting that you're trying to recover, that you're trying to do things, but we've granted you now a permit because you meet all the requirements within the code to have a fence, but now you've got a bigger mess that has been created by nobody's fault other than we don't have the checks and balances in there to ensure that if you're using the temporary use, that is something that's being granted to you under the state of emergency, versus you can't just, I don't use the word squat, but you can't just squat on your own property forever and not have anything because your neighbors are trying to do the right thing and you just don't want to. And I know it's probably very.
No, I think it's a good question because it most likely will come up. But my view would be the fact that you generally don't have a vacant lot that you just go and fence unless you have construction coming, you know, and you're trying to shield it. I'd have to look at, can you just have a standalone fence on your property? And if you want to tie it to your temporary use, then you would have to come and ask for an amendment to what you had been granted. If you were given permission to have your RV there and now you want to put a fence up, that you're now expanding the use on that property under this permit. So you'd have to come in and ask for the permission, I think, to put that fence up.
Just, I know, a lot of what ifs, but.
I would agree, and like, you know, just like with any contractor or property owner that comes in to ask for a permit, there's an analysis of that property, of what's already been approved at that address. And if, you know, their further work is in continuation of, that's what's already authorized in code or not. So we would, yeah, and we continue to do that even as we go around the town or are identified by residents of, you know, of properties that we need to review. We'll continue to do that.
Let me ask a question. Is there a way we can differentiate the residential from commercial? Because there are several commercial lots that have multiple trailers that have already been approved.
Yes.
Because
but-
I would, if I had a commercial lot with multiple trailers, I'd look at this and freak out, quite honestly.
Noted, Counselor. Yeah, we'll definitely take a look at that and yeah. Struggling with it right now, but I'll definitely, yeah, we'll.
So can I get some clarification?
Yeah.
Your resolution that you will be asked to take a look at after we have more dialogue with FEMA, that's simply to extend the existing permits beyond September 23rd, but not to grant new ones. Is that correct? Because we don't have a storm at this time.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was gonna ask about that. So, in Lee County, they've obviously extended theirs to coincide with Milton, but we have not. And is that because of, it's a different flood zone? Is there a reason why it applies to them, but it does not apply to us? Is that a policy decision that can be made? That, I would like some clarification on that, because if it is a policy decision that under the state of emergency, which we are in for Milton, if we can, based on the new resolution that's gonna come out, or the potential new resolution, based on that, can we make a policy decision to extend that to coincide with the state of emergency for Milton? Because
So-
that's a big question that people have.
Yeah, so the way that your code is set up to work is that when there is a state of emergency, when there is a storm, you as town council will authorize the issuance of emergency temporary placement permits because of the storm. And once that storm and that state of emergency has terminated, then you're not, the town is not issuing any more of these permits unless you open it up again. So you open up when these permits new permits can go out by resolution.
Well, and I would like some clarification, because right after the storm, FEMA was very adamant about, enforcing your code and ordinances and policies and procedures you had in place at the time of the storm. This current resolution was in place at the time of Milton, was not at Hurricane Ian, but it was at Hurricane Milton. So if we change or add to the qualifications to meet to get this temporary use, does that allow us to give out new temporary use permits, or only extend the ones that are currently out there?
Well, the ones that are currently out there, it's my understanding that they were all related to Ian. But I could be mistaken, because I have not done an analysis of all the ones that are out there.
It's very possible, but I'm guessing so we would need to get
Or
I
Ian?
think we would need to get clarification on,
We'll work to get that
you know,
clarified, yeah.
we had the ordinance in place, or we had the resolution in place before Milton, so does that then allow us the opportunity, based on what was already in place, to,
You would have to do that by resolution. You would need a resolution that says that you authorize the issuance of emergency temporary placement permits because of the damage or the displacement that has occurred because of this storm.
yeah, and I don't, I would not support going backwards, because that's part of the reason I think we're in this mess, is because we didn't have this, and even though we were trying to do what was in the best interest to get us to recover as possible and get people back on the island to work on their homes, has, in a sense, come back to bite us. I don't wanna
Go
do that again
backwards.
with Milton.
But going forward, should we have a storm?
Right, I understand that. Should we have another storm going forward, we will now have this in place to say we
Yes.
are following what we had in place.
Yes.
But I would have to be, you would have to really, really sell me that we wouldn't be penalized if we were to issue new ones based on Milton, even though this was in place. I would need to know, that I wouldn't want to create a new resolution saying because of the state of emergency for Milton, because we're long past Milton now, and now we're back to where we were at the beginning of Ian. So I want to be very careful that we're not doing that.
I don't think there's authority in your code or by resolution to staff right now to do that. So if somebody did approach the town manager requesting that, he most likely would deny it, and then they'd come to you and, you can make your decision, probably a denial as well.
A lot of intricacies in this one.
It is a new process, but you do have a framework. It's just that the general use of non-compliant structure automatically, when we were working and having dialogue with FEMA last year, it was, you passed a resolution that said we would not issue any more emergency temporary placement permits for non-compliant structures. Now we have a better grasp of what's compliant and what's non-compliant. So now we can allow the extension of those that appear to be compliant with the emergency evacuation plan or whatever other conditions are appropriate.
But you're still not issuing any new, unless there was another.
Right, at
state
this
of
point,
emergency
there's
issue.
nothing new because
gonna be-
they don't
Correct.
have the authority from you to do it.
That's right.
So that brings up another question. Again, I'm just trying to cover everything that we've handled over. So I'm on a property that has the sign off from the property owner. I don't own the property, but I'm operating based under a temporary use permit on a property that I was given permission to do. Now that property owner wants to start rebuilding their property, and I have to find another place to, so essentially, does that terminate their temporary use permit? Because it's tied to that location?
Where they're currently located, we need to find what the expiration date is of that
Or
permit.
does it
should be
transfer
the
to a
23rd.
potential new property?
I don't think that that's provided, but I have to go back and double check.
I
They
just would
can
like,
come- they can
because I know
come-
there's very
Yeah.
few
That's
instances.
gonna come up, though.
It's coming, right,
Yeah.
we all
Yeah.
know it's coming, so,
I can look at it, but once that permit expires, they have no legal right to be there, and code can come and, do a notice of violation. So they'll go to the town manager and ask for an extension of it, and then at that point, we will look to see, what were you granted, and what are your plans, what are you going to do, based on the circumstances, on a case-by-case basis. Will render a decision. If they disagree with that decision, it would come to you.
okay.
And your current code does provide for governmental use as well as commercial. So it is not just the residential, although residential is a big component of it. So if it is a commercial use, if they are compliant with flood regulations with FEMA, those might be extended as well.
But the state statute, or what has been passed, the legislature doesn't cover commercial.
The state statute says, basically, you are restricted as a local government from prohibiting that use. So the state statute overrides this, that says maybe they needed to leave earlier. We cannot prohibit a residential use because of the state statute. But once the state statute goes away, which at this point it will because of the state of emergency on Ian expiring, then we defer back to our local ordinance, which does have flexibility in it for you to go beyond what the state statute allowed.
Yeah, again, though, we should have some commercial component where if, the guy's building his restaurant back or whatever, he's got the opportunity to move next door or to another location to keep that business running, because he's gonna need the money to pay for the build.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at. We need to be very clear on that as to what their ability is going to be or not to be, because those situations are going to be coming very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we want to encourage, we've got to be consistent. We're saying on one hand, hey, Tom, we want you to rebuild your business brick and mortar. And then Tom says, okay, well, while I'm doing that, can I move next door or over here? I got permission. I'm doing what you're asked, but at the same time, you've got to realize I've got to generate revenue to feed my family while this 2-year process is going on.
So I don't know the answer to your question right offhand, but I will tell you that your code, your existing ordinance does address some of that. So I'll do some more analysis. But we also need to look at our application, as far as which ones we're going to extend, because we could have a commercial one come to us for an extension, if they have an existing permit,
Yeah, see,
which
what-
it sounds like they do.
Right, so what happens here is it's the unknown, it's the not knowing that's driving everyone crazy. So if we can create a path forward where we have, you do this, and this, and then you've got your path forward, it's the uncertainty that's weighing on everybody, and it's not just that guy, it's his two employees that are looking to rent, you know, potentially something here for the next year or two while that construction's going on. Is he buying inventory? Is he making more purchases? Is he investing? It's just that uncertainty that he or she can't make a decision, so.
Well, and I think in fairness, I think since the storm, we have tried to provide the clarity based on. No, I know what you're trying to say, and we all want people to succeed, we all want them to come back, but
But
we
it's the
haven't-
uncertainty that's driving people.
Yeah, but they need to understand why the uncertainty is there, and I don't think everybody gets it. We'll do what we can, but we have a partner because of something that was outside of our control that we have to work with.
Right. I
And-
understand.
And that funnels down what our ability as a council allows us to do. We could still do it, but there's consequences to those actions. And I think we're trying to narrow that down. I think Will and staff are now continuing on what's been happening for the last 2.5 years to try to funnel that down to where both sides can be in agreement that this works for everybody. It shows that you're doing the right thing. It shows, we're getting there.
Right. And I agree, we don't want, you know, we had that pizza place popping up at the condo. I mean, we don't want stuff like that happening. We want to.
Well, and I go back to what I said earlier, you know, you tried to do the right thing, the council at the time, right after the storm, to allow people back on the island, to have a place to live while they worked, to allow a business owner to operate, to put people back to work. And unfortunately, we have people who took it too far.
Yeah, then
They-
you had
they-
5
You
RVs
give them
on
an
one
inch and they take
property.
a mile, and now we're,
Right,
you know.
I understand.
And it's frustrating that people do that, not everyone does it, but it's frustrating that people do it
It's
because.
just like TSA. I mean, 99% of the people going through TSA, you know, you got.
Right. One line shorter to go through the normal route, right?
Right.
There's a lot of great feedback. I appreciate it. We'll strive to include as much of that as possible in here in alignment with our current ordinance, which will help. We're getting great feedback. We're getting feedback from FEMA, and as we get that feedback, we're continuing to refine this. But what's going to remain beyond is definitions that are already in there and, you know, of compliant structures. And we're going to further clarify that for the residents, which I think we do. And beyond that, I appreciate the feedback on what if, you know, they are ready to start construction. They've been operating on that site. They're ready to start construction, and they find a new site, you know, with approvals to do it. We want to integrate that in here as well. That's great feedback. But again, it's going to come down to the majority of the approval process is going to come down to, is it a compliant structure or not? And there will still be, even by the time we finish our inputs to the 252 by tomorrow, there's still going to be structures that were identified on that list that are non-compliant. And that's not going to change. What we have to demonstrate is what we're doing as a town to deal with the non-compliant structure going forward. That's part of the process of FEMA too, is what are our policies, processes, and procedures. So if new ones pop up in the future that are non-compliant, do we have the right policies, processes, and procedures in place to deal with that, to try to get them out or bring them into compliance?
Will, could I just ask, just at 10,000 foot, and I know this is an evolving issue, but if you were, for folks who are watching who might have an RV on the island, you've got really 2 deadlines coming up. You've got the FEMA deadline, and then you've got the September deadline, September 23rd deadline. What's your advice to somebody who has an RV here on Fort Myers Beach at this point? What would you advise them at this point?
I'd advise them to remain calm and continue to monitor the town's information sources as we get this. If they have a permit, you know, then their permit still stands to remain in that temporary structure here within the Fort Myers Beach. and continue to monitor, and we'll continue to get information out as we update our application process, and the September 23rd comes, is then more, before that, more information will come out on how they can be extended, and come in and for that extension, work with the town for that extension.
Thank
Is
you.
that
And
helpful?
It is helpful.
Okay.
And so if somebody has an RV and they're not living in it, and it's just parked on their property or in their driveway, should they sort of adhere to the same advice that you just gave?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That was a big question I get a lot. Well, since the storm, I've bought an RV or I've bought a trailer to live in. I'm back in my house. My house has been CO'd, but we decided to keep the trailer, or we decided to keep the RV. Is that gonna be considered a non-compliant structure after the temporary use permit is gone? Because I'm just storing it there. It's still roadworthy, it's still licensed, am I gonna get dinged for keeping an RV? I know of several houses that they're living in their homes, but they bought a very nice RV that's now parked beside their home that they're not living in, it's just using. Is that gonna be addressed?
So I think I had this conversation with Judith Frankel as far as what your land development code allows. And if you do have an RV but you're not living in it, I think that's the distinction. You may be able to store some things in it, but you can't be living in it. So we can bring back to you what your current regulations allow. Oftentimes in other communities, they require fencing so that the RV itself is not viewed or visible from a street, but you don't have that in your code at this point, and I would, because of, SB 180 and being more restrictive, I don't know that I would advocate putting that in there.
Yeah, I'm just trying to cover all the bases for what we've been hearing.
So is our goal to have this as a major agenda item at our next meeting so that we can get through all of this? Because like you said, then we're basically, a month away, 3 weeks away.
That is my goal, yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I do want to interject that your agenda is poised to go out on Monday, and I don't know, it's Thursday, I don't know how quickly we can move, but we will try to do the best we can.
Or could it be a town manager item?
It can be, and again, everything is still in place until the 23rd of September, and you do have at least another meeting, the first part of, I guess, September the 11th. And then I think you have an M&P meeting as well, so we will.
Not in September.
Not in September, okay. Well, you
Well-
can always have a special meeting if needed.
I was just gonna say, this is a very important topic. If we have to have one agenda item to get through, I'll be more than happy to have a special meeting if we need to get some clarity
Yeah,
for those people for the
absolutely.
September 23rd deadline as it is now.
Mhm.
If for some reason you can't work magic and make it happen
Another
by-
Hail Mary
on.
pass,
by
right?
Monday. You work a lot of magic, both of you guys, the staff does, but sometimes the wand runs out of magic. Any other questions for Will on this one? All right, we'll move on to agenda management. Scott, anything new you want to add to the agenda management or questions about the agenda management?
I do not.
Karen,
No, I'm good right now.
Vice Mayor?
I just had an item that might be helpful. It doesn't have to be immediately, but something for the staff to think about. It might be helpful to have a presentation at an M&P by Frankie and his team, the floodplain manager, whoever else whoever subject matter expert you think would be helpful. A lot of folks on the island, both in residences and condos and in businesses, are doing and utilizing all kinds of new flood and mitigation technology, panels, flood doors, all kinds of new systems coming out to help mitigate against flooding. And there's a lot of questions about permitting. There's questions of sort of, and I'm interested in the expertise of the town. What are the most frequently asked questions about these new resilience steps that people are taking? What's the most common mistakes people are making when they file for permits? Any basic information that folks ought to know about? And just that kind of a concept I think would be helpful to people as they're rightfully trying to become more resilient. There's a lot of, these are extremely expensive, and you hate to have somebody head down a path that's a wrong path. And if we could just kind of help educate people more on the front end, I think it could be helpful at some point. Again, the timing would be up to the town staff.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. It's like basically, I think it was about a year and a half or 2 years ago, we gave an update of like timelines. Here's what you can expect for timing based on what we're seeing for permit requirements now or influx, maybe just to go along with that, an update as to,
Yeah, I think that'd be
here's what
great.
we're seeing, here's what's trending now, and it's no longer demo permits.
Well, a lot of folks, because of the structure, certain wall panels aren't appropriate. Residents are certain allowed to do, there's pressure issues, there's all kinds of flood issues, there's all kinds of very complicated dynamics that go into this. And I know everybody's got a unique situation, but there must be some general sort of counsel that could be provided. And just stuff you're seeing on the front lines as people make application to install these kind of systems. That's all I've got.
Very good. Counselor King?
Nothing.
I do not have anything either. Anything else for the,
Mayor,
No.
can you read about the advisory committees?
oh,
please?
yes, thank you. Glad you reminded me. Piling paper. This is a public announcement for advisory committee vacancies. As a reminder, members of the town's advisory committees are appointed by the town council to serve 2-year terms. The current terms for several committee members are set to expire on September 30th, 2025, which will result in vacancies on the following committees. Anchorage Advisory Committee will have 3, Audit Committee will have 3, Bay Oaks Recreational Center Advisory Board will have 4, Marine and Environmental Resources Task Force will have 3, Public Safety will have 3. In anticipation of these vacancies, the town is now accepting applications from residents who are interested in serving their community through participation on one of our advisory committees. A description of each committee's roles and responsibilities along with membership requirements may be found on the town's website. We encourage residents who are passionate about civic engagement and public service to apply. Applications must be submitted to the town clerk no later than Friday, September 12th, 2025, to be considered for appointment by the town council at its meeting scheduled for October 2nd, 2025. For more information and to access the application form, please visit our town's website. I won't read that whole long hyperlink. Thank you for your interest in serving the town.
Just point of clarification, Madam Clerk, these are vacancies in the sense that they're up. The term is up, but it doesn't necessarily mean the incumbent person is not reapplying. Is that fair?
Correct.
Right, doesn't mean you still can't apply, but it doesn't mean that no one is applying. There may be an incumbent who's interested in seeking reappointment.
That is correct.
I just wanted to be clear, yeah.
Yes.
And incumbents need to reapply
Right.
if they
right.
want
That's a good
to
point.
continue.
Good
Yes.
point.
Very good point. Anything else for the good of the order?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Counselor King, seconded by Counselor Safford. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 11, oh, my glasses.
39.
40.
11:40 now.